Good morning. Everyone hear me okay? All right, very good. Welcome to our first annual Lakeview Road Fire Training Symposium. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Gordon Davis. I'm the Battalion Chief assigned to the Training Division for Wilmington Fire Department, and I'll be presenting and narrating some of the material today. We have what we think is going to be a very valuable program to present today, and we thank you all for coming. And we'll be glad to answer any questions at the end. So if you do have any questions as we go, please save them to the end of the presentation, and we'll do our best to answer those. A couple of housekeeping items. If you haven't found the restrooms yet, if you exit the theater here to my right, go through the lobby area near the elevators, down the hallway, and to the left. That's where you'll find the the restrooms. And also, there is refreshments out there if you haven't found those as well, coffee, donuts, and such. And you're welcome to help yourself to those as we go. We will take a short intermission at some point, so if you do need to leave the room, that's fine. But we will have a short break in the middle of the program to get up, stretch the legs, and get some fresh refreshments if you need them. One other item. Since some of you may have to leave early, thanks to Reverend Brad Martin, our departmental chaplain. They're providing free copies of Dr. David Griffin, his book, From PTSD to PTG. Dave Griffin was involved in the Charleston Super Sofa Center fire, I guess about 14 years ago now. He's now battalion chief with the Charleston Fire Department, and he's authored several books related to their tragic event where they lost 9 firefighters. So, at this time, I'd like to turn things over to our Chief of Department, John Looney, for a welcome.
Thank you, Chief Davis. And everyone, as Chief Davis said, good morning and welcome to our first annual Lakeview Fire Training Symposium. This is going to be a great day. It's following up on our memorial dedication that we had on Friday, which was it was outstanding. And to look around the audience here, a lot of people here, and this is what we expected, and we're very happy with that. As we go through this training symposium, we're going to present this incident at 1927 Lakeview Road. It's important. It's important to all of us. It was obviously a tragic day in the history of the Wilmington Fire Department, and this is our incident, and we're here to present it to you. We're also going to talk about a lot of the contributing factors, recommendations, and the recommendations under Chief Donahue that we did implement, and now we're still continue to implement other recommendations that were set forth in our NIOS report. I challenge all of you to take something away from this. It's very important. That's why we're doing this today. We want to educate others. So enjoy the symposium, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, so we all know why we're here. Unfortunately, our department suffered a tragic event on September 24th, 2016. Unfortunately, we lost Jerry Fickus, Chris Leach, and Artie Hope that morning, or later on, and changed our department forever. Over the last 5 years, we've done a lot of things internally to try to prevent that, and again, this is our program to show what we've done and where we are moving forward. So as we go through this, please keep these 3 faces in the back of your mind, because that's the reason why we're here today, to let their memory go on to new things and better things for both the Wilmington Fire Department and the fire service all together. So, let's rewind back to 2016. At 2016, the department had 172 personnel as the uniform strength. We worked a 24/72 schedule, 4-platoon system. There were 6 engines, one of which is a squad engine, Squad 4, 2 ladder companies, 2 battalion chiefs without aides, running out of 6 fire stations. So very similar to how we operate today, but we now have a few less uniformed people in our authorized strength, but we were a little bit understaffed at the time of the Lakeview Road incident. In 2016, the department responded to just over 23,000 incidents, or there were 23,000 incidents in the city. Out of those incidents, over 4,000 of those were non-EMS incidents, so that's everything from automatic fire alarms to house fires to everything else in between that was not categorized as an EMS incident. There were 409 fires in 2016. Again, that's everything from trash fires to building fires. There were 83 working structure fires that year, and those were considered some type of fire department extinguishment within those structure fires. Up till September 24th, 2016, there were 18 fire department responses to Lakeview Road and Canby Park Estates. Of those 18 responses, there were a variety of incidents, including automobile fires. There was a kitchen fire just down the street from 1927 Lakeview Road, and multiple other incidents. So our personnel were very familiar with that block, very familiar with the houses, and very familiar with the community itself as far as the folks that lived in the community. Again, September 24th response was the 19th response to that for the house fire, and the last working house fire on Lakeview Road was approximately 2 years earlier at 1944 Lakeview Road. The box alarm assignment for 1927 Lakeview Road on September 24th, 2016 was 3 engine companies, 1 ladder company, 2 battalion chiefs. Of those 3 engine companies, Squad 4 was running as the 3rd due engine company, more of a special services assignment. All personnel would be entering for search and other tasks as needed. At the time, Squad 4 was assigned with 5 personnel, and during this incident, they responded to 1927 Lakeview Road with 5 personnel. At the time, the 4th engine company, which was the RIT engine company, had to be added by personnel. And you'll hear when we listen to the incident, you'll hear the 4th engine added to that assignment. So taking a look at Canby Park Estates. There's approximately 250 homes in Canby Park Estates. It's situated kind of in the far west end of the city of Wilmington. Actually, the very far end of Canby Park Estates is actually shared with the Ellesmere Fire Company, as far as that's part of their district and the last street in Canby Park Estates. Most of the homes are 2-story row homes. There is a school and also a few 3-story row homes in one section, but most of the building stock is identical, and you'll see from the photos here, most of it is 2 stories in the front and 3 stories in the rear. The markers on the screen, I know they're a little difficult to see. That's marking out the hydrants that were available. As you can see here, the fire building was situated just about mid-block, maybe a little bit to what we'll call the lower side. And you'll hear this in some of the accounts. You'll hear back and forth discussion about the low side and the high side. So long story short, the far end of the screen here to my left is what we consider the low side. The upper end of the screen here, closest to me, that's what we consider the high side. So the numbers start low and work high, and there's also a slight hill on Lakeview Road. So it kind of works both ways. Low numbers and also, again, a little bit of a hill and a little bit of incline as the street goes down. Also with the layout of the neighborhood, the streets are very narrow, on-street parking. All of the streets in this neighborhood have back alleys that are drivable. However, a lot of fences, a lot of cars, sheds, things like that to the rear of the structures through the neighborhood. Again, our personnel were no strangers to this neighborhood. You can see by the number of responses, even just in 2016, that our units were in this neighborhood quite a bit, both 2016 and obviously beforehand. So again, our personnel pretty much knew the layout. They were very familiar with the hydrants and also with the direction of travel. So Lakeview Road is one way running up from the low side up to the high side. The structure itself. So 1927 Lakeview Road was built in 1944. It was a typical type 3 construction or brick and joist. Again, 2 stories in the front or side A. There was 4 steps up to the front door. And I know it's a little difficult to see in this picture, but we'll have some other pictures that'll show that with a little more detail. 3 stories on side C with a basement garage. And this particular structure had the garage converted to living space. And again, we'll show you some examples of that here in just a minute as well. The structure itself was 18 foot wide by 28 foot deep. Side A of the structure to the actual roof line was approximately 25 feet, and then side C of the structure to the roof line was approximately 30 feet. And again, you'll see those in the other photos here in just a second. The entire structure had 1,075 square foot of livable space. So this is a picture of side C. This is the actual fire building. If you look down to the lower end, that's the actual entry door. There was a fence that divided off that yard, and also a fence that divided off where you see the lift machinery there. So here's an example of another house in that block on Lakeview Road that was a little more similar to what the structure looked like before the fire. Again, the garage area was converted to living space, and there was a sliding glass door like you see down here on this one. The only difference in this one is it's reversed. The entry door, again, would be closer to me on the left side of the slider, and the slider would be to the right, with a fence on both sides, a 6-foot wooden fence on both sides of the structure. So again, 18-foot wide. The rear yard area was approximately 20 foot between both sides of the fence. So again, a fairly narrow access point to the rear of the structure. So with the conversion to living space, of course, the basement of the structure was modified, and we'll talk about that in a little more detail a little bit later in the program. So again, just another layout here showing the dimensions of the structure. It was about middle of the row. There was 8 homes attached together in this particular row. Most of the clusters in Canby Park Estates are either 7 or 8 homes per cluster. This one, again, coming up from the low side was the 4th one in, and then coming down from the high side was the 5th one in. Fences, for most of these, fences behind them in the rear, fences between the houses with the breaks of the rows. So there was access, but access wasn't necessarily the easiest from side A. Again, the initial alarm assignment for 1927 Lakeview Road on September 24th, 2016. Engine 1, Engine 5, Squad 4, Ladder 2, Battalions 2 and 1 were on the initial assignment. And then you'll hear once we start into the audio, you'll hear that a 4th engine was added, which was SB2. So when you hear the audio, SB2 is an engine company. It's just an acronym identifier we used for that particular engine. But it is an engine company, and it was added to the assignment as the 4th engine. Eventually, there were multiple other units, both the rest of the city units and also county units that responded on this. You'll hear those in the audio, but this was the initial alarm assignment. Of the personnel that were working that night, Engine 1's crew, Lieutenant Haley, Kevin Weems was the driver, and you'll hear in the audio at the time we were using Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta as our identifiers. This is showing what those positions were. Alpha was the driver, Bravo was the nozzle person, Charlie was the hydrant person. Firefighter Brad Speakman was the nozzle person on Engine 1, and Firefighter Dave Roberts was the hydrant person on Engine 1. Engine 5's crew, Lieutenant John Cawthray, Domingo Lopez was the driver, Ardith Hope was the nozzle person, and Jimmy Greco was the hydrant person. Ladder 2, Chris Leach was the officer, Larry Denizio was the driver, Joe Ryan was the follow-in, so that would be the partner with the officer, the irons firefighter that would be paired up with the officer, and Sean Furrow was the tiller person, the outside vent firefighter. Squad 4, again, Squad 4 at the time was assigned with 5 personnel. Lieutenant Bert Tyson, Firefighter Jake Craig, Firefighter Vinny Denizio was the nozzle person, Firefighter Jerry Fickus was the hydrant person, also the what we considered the vent enter search person for that crew when they were in their 3rd to assignment, and Firefighter Terrence Tate was the Delta firefighter, also a vent enter search firefighter. At the time, Squad 4 was in its first year of its 3rd to assignment, that the crew was designed to work in a split team operation, whether they were 4 or 5 people assigned. Typically, Team 1, which was the officer and the nozzle person, would go to side A of the structure, and Team 2, which would be a combination of either the hydrant and the Delta or VES firefighter, would go to side C, and if they were working with a 4-person crew, it would be the driver, and the hydrant person would go to side C. So again, their initial assignment was primary search, and that was, again, customary for them to be split up between side A and side C of the structure. And you will hear some audio that reflects that when we get to that point. Working that night for the battalion chiefs, Jerry McCaffrey was at District 2 at Battalion 2. He was the initial incident commander. Battalion Chief Dennis Curlin was the initial safety officer. As the incident started to escalate, at the time, Deputy Chief Mike Donahue responded to the scene and became the incident commander, and as well as several other folks that fell into the command structure throughout the incident. When we listen to the audio, you'll hear the transfer of command over to Deputy 2, which again is Mike Donahue, and he stayed as the incident commander through the balance of the incident. Okay, we're going to go ahead and transition into the 911 call and then into the fire audio. We're going to play out quite a bit, and we'll pause a couple times to discuss a couple things. I'm also going to kind of go through the timeline on the screen as we get to certain benchmarks through the audio. So we're ready for that 911 call.
September 24th, 2016, 2 hours, 54 minutes, and 15 seconds a.m.
Newcastle County 911, do you need police, fire, ambulance? 911, how may I help you?
Yeah, I can get a report. Close your mouth.
911,
We have a fire in our house
what's the address?
in 1927 Lakeview Road.
1927
There are
White.
so you have to come up the alleyway.
Stand on line.
Hello? Okay, you have to come
1927
up our alleyway.
Lakeview.
Lakeview Road.
All right.
Yes.
Hang on.
Okay. No. Nope.
Fire and ambulance.
Fire
No. We need a
7599.
fire truck. I know. There's a fire truck there, please, Harry.
7599. 1927
Tell me exactly
Lakeview
what happened.
Road.
Tell me exactly what happened.
I don't know. I was asleep. And my son woke me up. We have animals in our house, please. Hey!
What's the telephone number you're calling from? Ma'am, I don't even know what's going on there. What's going on?
I don't know. It's popping. It's fucking popping. The house is on fire. And my animals are in my house.
Is everybody... Ma'am, listen to me.
Everybody's out of
Listen to me. Is everybody out of the house?
Yeah. Yeah. Except for my
What's
cat.
on fire?
Something in my basement. And something in my dining room.
Listen. You need to try to calm down so I can get the information. Okay, you have everybody out of the house right now, all right?
Oh, my God, my daughter. We're back in my house.
Do not go back in that house.
Okay, yeah, get outside.
All right.
Get
We're
out
going to get the
here.
fire. Ma'am,
Yeah.
is she back out of the house?
Everybody's out of the house.
Okay, listen. Ma'am, listen to me. Ma'am, listen to me. The fire department's on the way. You need to stay out of the house, okay? We're sending help right now.
Hurry up, please.
Okay, stand in line with the police, ma'am. Ma'am, stand in line with the police. PSO, do you need any
You
additional
have to go
information?
to the backyard in the basement.
Wilmington's.
It's so small.
Wilmington's.
All right, ma'am, stand in line. I'm going to transfer you to...
Okay, as you can tell from the 911 call, there was quite a bit of confusion on whether everyone was out of the house or not. The initial person calling 911 came from inside the house. That was the caller you just heard, and she was in the rear of the structure. We're going to go ahead and play the fire audio now.
Audience 1927 Lakeview Road. A house fire. Engine 1, Engine 5, Squad 4, Ladder 2, Battalions 1 and 2. Central Units 1927 Lakeview Road. A house fire. Engine 1, Engine 5, Squad 4, Ladder 2, Battalions 1 and 2. Between Rodman Road and New Road. 0257. 92 respond. Receive tank.
Battalion 1 responding.
Battalion 1, 258.
Engine 5 responding.
Engine 5, 258. Battalion 2, the caller in the line said, believes the basement's on fire. She has everybody out of the house. There's animals in the house. At one point, her daughter ran back inside, but believed that she's out at this time. Sounds like they're all in the backyard.
Okay. Squad 4. Ladder 2.
Squad 4, ladder 2, 258. Engine 1, are you responding?
Ladder 2 to follow. Car start the 4th engine. I got a 2-story middle of the road. Fire coming from the rear.
Attention all units. 1927 Lakeview Road. Canby Park Estates. Residential structure fire. SB2. Attention all units. 1927 Lakeview Road. Between Rodman and New Road. Canby Park Estates. Residential structure fire. SB2 301.
Engine 1, go around and get the hydrant. Okay. Engine 1's laying out Lakeview and Rodman. Engine 5 around.
Engine 1's laying out Lakeview and Rodman. Engine 5 arrival 301.
Bravo Battalion 2, assuming command. Conditions as reported.
Battalion 2 302.
Battalion 1 arrival, assuming safety and accountability.
Safety and accountability 302.
Wait for report of assisted traffic.
Lakeview Command.
SB2 responding.
SB2 303. Lakeview Road Command.
Command guys.
Just copy ladder 2 officer's message.
Caught it.
He was cut out. He said something about subject trapped. Attention all units. 1927 Lakeview Road, Canby Park Estates. Stand by to fire scene PA6.
Command the fireboard.
Lakeview Command, go ahead.
Second. One out to charge that line. It's covered.
Fiber to Lakeview Command, go ahead.
Squad's arriving.
Squad 4305. Fiber.
Man the fireboard.
Lakeview Road Command, go ahead.
Heavy fire first floor, 2 2-inch lines in service.
Receive. 2 2-inch lines in service. Heavy fire, first floor, 305.
Getting reports from occupants now that everyone's out.
Receive, Command.
Charlie, start the line. That's Charlie. Command latitude officer. Squawk for Charlie, command. We need a line in the rear. Squawk for Charlie, command. Command, go ahead. Command, go ahead. We have heavy fire going from the basement to the second floor in the rear. We have power lines down. Command to 5, we're P&L.
Okay, let's go ahead and pause the audio.
Receive
please.
Lakeview Command.
Okay, so you just heard Jerry Fickus radio that fire conditions in the rear from the basement to the roof line. We're going to play a video now, and this video is going to show, this is a cell phone video from a bystander. It's going to show the conditions on side C. We'll try to cue you in the best that we can, but down in the lower corner closest to me, you'll see Jerry Fickus and Terry Tate as they round the fence. And you'll see actually pretty much the same time that Jerry gave that radio report that you just heard. So let's go ahead and play the video, please.
My fucking house on fire. That shit engulfed in flames.
Okay, all the way down here in the lower corner. That's Jerry Fickus and Terry Tate.
Oh my Lord. That's crazy. Motherfucking fire people don't know how to do shit. That's crazy. That's 180 this probably lost. That shit crazy.
Okay, we'll go back to the presentation. All right, so again, Jerry Fickus, Terry Tate had made the rear. Again, that's normal operations for Squad 4 at the time. So their team 2 was going to the rear of the structure. They were there, gave the report, fire from the basement to the roof, requested a line, and of course power lines down. The previous slide here, this was before they arrived to the rear. This was also a cell phone picture, we believe from one of the family members, and this also shows the fence and then the access. So this was looking through the fence straight at what would be the sliding glass door of the structure. Again, probably most likely before fire department units were on scene. Okay, let's go ahead and resume the audio, please.
Command SB2 officer. SB2 officer. SB2 officer, got Chief. We got. Command 5, where I got fire, the subject's trapped in the first floor. Firefighters trapped. They. We need another engine ladder company.
Units operating 1927 Lakeview Road, a mayday has been declared. Subjects trapped on the first floor. Fires on the first floor, mayday has been declared. All units operating except for the companies calling mayday, switch over and operate on WFDC. WFDB. Harbor to Lakeview Command.
Command SB2 on. Peter Rick. SB2 officer. Command SB2 officer. SB2 officer. You got the red assignment, need you in front of the building. Bravo, SB2.
SB2, 310.
Thank you, Peter Rick. Report to the front of the building. And the fire force.
Lakeview Command, go ahead.
Did you copy the next engine and ladder?
That's affirmative. We're in the process of contacting city units. We have county units coming also. Lakeview Command, which unit's calling a Mayday? And we have a location for them.
What else do Lakeview Command? Command, go ahead. From the 4-gate way, they can't find my nozzle. Fireman speak when he went through the forges and stuff inside the front door. We also can't find a nozzle for 5. And I can't talk to his officer. Command ladder 2 officer. Command ladder 2 officer. W2 on radio.
C-W2.
Safety to Rick. Command SB2 officer. Officer. Command SB2 officer. SB2 officer. Make access to the house through the rear. Through the rear. We got to get into the back of that house. All right, is there any apparatus in the rear? Go up the alleyway in the rear. Make access to the rear. All right, do we have a line in the rear? Now you let's take a line with you. Command, the SB2, we do have 2 firefighters making contact with them. They're in the basement. We need you to make the basement from the rear. Receive. SB2's on loop.
C-W2.
Command, the last 2 officers. Command, the last 2 officers. Command is 3 officers. Safety to command. Have the rig respond to the rear. I'm in the rear of the building. SB2 has the rig assignments are coming your way. SB2 Alpha. Back in the building, command. We're going to need a water supply in the rear. I need.
Robert View Command.
Yeah, so I go to the ALS, BLS to the front of the building.
Receive on ALS and BLS to the front of the building. I'll see you at 16-5 reporting to the rear of the structure.
That 105 board has the Mayday been cleared.
F1, I do not believe it has been cleared. The last transmission I had was 2 still in the basement. SB2's trying to make access.
Safety to command. I need a line to the rear of the building now to the 4th collapse. Get to the side. Every 10, up here now. Deputy 5.
you calling fireboard?
He's responding. F1's responding.
Receive F1. You have 4 BLS, 2 ALS, Trooper 4 responding.
Proceed.
If you command, you have 16-5 rear
Deputy 2
structure.
fireboard.
Deputy 2, go ahead.
I'm assuming command. At the street, 1 firefighter was trapped at this time.
Chief, Deputy 2 has command. Fireboard to PA1, I got emergency alert. All right, Deputy 2, you also have 6 to the rear of the structure.
First rear, street 2. And battalion 1. Commander Battalion 1.
Okay, let's
Stand
go
by, fireboard.
ahead and pause the audio again, please. And we're going to transition over to some video footage, starting with side C, which is the same time of the arrival of engine 16-5 from Ellesmere, which was the first county company to arrive on scene after the initial collapse in Mayday. And you'll also see some footage from side A following that with the companies operating on side A. So let's go ahead and play those videos, please.
Forward ALS, 6.
ALS have a weapon from the house fire building currently photograph 1907.
second, please. Okay, so if you look in the center of the screen there, you'll see the first hose stream of the first water being applied from side C. That was from the hand line from engine 16.5. In front of engine 16.5 from Ellesmere is SB2, which was, again, put on the assignment as the fourth engine for RIT and then assigned to side C. So they're nose to nose with engine 16.5 in the rear. At this point, both the first and second collapses have already occurred, and we're not exactly sure on the exact timing. We believe Brad Speakman was out of the building at this point on side A. Firefighters Jerry Fickus, Chris Leach, and Artie Hope were still in the building at this point. So you can go ahead and resume the video, please.
Already 17 response.
Okay, now we'll play some video footage from side A.
13 engine cover, Wellington Fire Station 4, 0357. Station 13, Newcastle County Collapse Team, respond and assist, Wilmington Fire Department, no residential fire. 1927 Lakeview Road in Canby Park, 0357. Station 13, Newcastle County Collapse Team, respond and assist, Fire Department, no residential fire. 1927 Lakeview Road in Canby Park. Were you able to get any bail to 1906 Road for paramedic 1901? Can you, what's the Murphy left on this? Responding to the fires, 1927 Lakeview. Still out in PJ.
Thank you. We're going to transition back into the presentation. So again, at this point, Brad Speakman was removed from the building on side A. Water was on the fire from side C. Of course, there were already hand lines in service on side A. Water was applied on side A, so the video that you just saw from side A looks like most of the fire was knocked down on side A at that point. They were still working on making entry from side C. And you'll again see some other photos that show the debris at this point and the difficulty of making any further advances. Let's go ahead and start the audio again, please.
Lakeview Command, Guide.
Unit from 16, have a report to the rear of the structure.
All right, 16.
Still have 2 firefighters unaccounted for. There 16-5. Command last 2 officers. And 5 Alpha. Command ladder 2 officer. 5 Alpha. Command SB2. Command SB2 officer. Command of safety and accountability. Safety for the building with the ring. Have you made contact with those 2 fire? Negative. Every reported location is the basement.
Excuse me.
We had a complete collapse of the floor into the basement. We have water on the rear of the building now, trying to make that. For the housing. Command of Fire Force.
Command, Guide.
What units do I have responding?
All of your city assets are on scene. 16-5s to the rear of the structure. 16-5s to the rear of the building. You have Trooper 4, 3 ALS, 4 BLS.
Two more engines landed from the county. Call back to Battalion Chief. Have restored. Scorpio, Officer Command. Go ahead. Defense of this first 3. We just arrived. We're in the building. We're in the building. Copy. Engine 3 officer, bring your whole company to the front of the building. Coming. Safety to command. 65's in the rear, work on a permanent water supply. We're going to need a second team here. Okay, I got 2 engines and a ladder coming from the county. On hose line and pulling debris in the garage. Okay, Fire Force, advise me when the county units arrive.
Receive, Command.
Joe, head in. Joe, head in.
Pizza Company.
Chief 31. Units not operating on the Mayday. Switch over to B. Keep this channel clear for the Mayday and the units operating, please.
Command, ladder 2 officer. Lakeview Command of Fire Office. First 2 county units arrive on scene, have them go to the rear of the structure. Meet up with Battalion 1, safety and accountability.
Receive, Lakeview Command.
Command of Fire Force, any progress is from the rear.
Fiber to Battalion 1, safety and accountability. Battalion 1.
Holy Force in the front of the building, in the front of... Commander Battalion 1. Battalion 1. Are you making progress from the rear? Yes, Chief. We're making progress, knocking flies down, removing debris, trying to make access. Copy. We have one firefighter trapped toward the rear of the structure in the basement. We are at present time trying to make access to it.
Receive 1 firefighter still trapped rear of the structure in the basement.
Battalion 2 to ladder 2 officers.
Lakeview Command.
Lakeview Command.
You have 21-7 coming to the back of the structure. It's a ladder. I'll advise when they're arriving. They've been responding for 2 minutes.
They have reports of Battalion 1.
Receive.
Hey. 10-5 word.
Command, go ahead.
Give me an engine and rescue from the county also. And we're fighter now. You copy, Command? Command ladder 2 officer. Safety to command. Go ahead. Hey, copy, Detective.
He's calling for a medic to the rear of the building, Command.
F1 safety, Command. Command, the safety and accountability in the rear. Medic. Safety to command. Subject to the out of the building. We need EMS in the rear of the building. We have them. Just record. Commander, safety accountability. Have that firefighter. F1A to command. Command, go ahead. One firefighter evacuated. Do you know if there's another still inside? I copy you have one firefighter evacuated through the rear. Chief, do you have anybody else inside that you know of, Chief? Affirmative, we have one toward the rear of the structure, trapped under the floor. We do have verbal contact with us. We are making progress. Chief, are you saying you have one more person trapped inside? Thank you, Command. Looking for one more subject. The nozzleman from 1. We have the nozzleman from 1. It's a nozzleman from 5. And we have verbal contact with her. We believe she's trapped under a piece of flooring in the front of the dwelling. Did you copy safety accountability? Charge behind you.
Fire to Trooper 4.
Okay, let's go ahead and stop the audio, please. Okay, so at this point, firefighter Brad Speakman from Engine 1 was removed on Side A. Firefighter Jerry Fickus, who made entry from Side C, was removed on Side C. The companies had contact with firefighter Artie Hope, who is still in the basement towards Side A, still trapped in debris. And there's no contact from Ladder 2 officer, which was Chris Leach. I'm sure you heard numerous attempts there to contact Ladder 2 officer. 03:48 hours, Artie Hope was removed from the building on Side C and transferred to EMS. That was 39 minutes after the first collapse. At 03:50, additional crews were sent into the building from Side C to search for Chris Leach. So it was determined at this point that Chris Leach was unaccounted for, and the search teams were directed to try to locate him. Debris was still very heavy in the basement, and crews worked for quite some time to attempt to locate Chris Leach. And as you can see from the photos, there was quite a bit of personnel there working, quite a bit of debris, and at 04:30 hours, Chris Leach was located underneath a debris pile in the basement. That was 1 hour and 21 minutes after the first collapse. At 05:01, Chris Leach was pronounced deceased and removed from the structure. That was 1 hour and 58 minutes after the first collapse. And at 05:19 hours, the incident was placed under control. And this was Chris Leach being removed from the building on Side C. Okay, we're going to go ahead and transition over to a video accounts from the members of the initial arriving companies.
So that night in general, I often refer to it as it was a great night till it wasn't. It was a good evening, good crew, laughed a lot of jokes, pretty busy, had a lot of runs. Up until the run came in, we were in quarters when the run came in. And, you know, it was pretty clear by the dispatch that we were going to a fire. And we got on the truck and we're heading up. Everybody, you know, everybody that worked together multiple times, so everybody kind of had their game plan, knew what they were going to do. And we came in and we went down Prospect to the bottom of Lakeview and stretched supply line from the bottom of Lakeview up the street. We stopped some distance from the house, 1927, because we needed to leave room for the ladder to get the ground ladders out of the rear. We deployed a 300-foot 2-inch hand line to the front of the house. As we approached the house, it, you know, was your typical 2-story brick middle of the row. We had black smoke under pressure coming out of the house. There was no visible fire in the front. There was a glow from the rear. My nozzleman, Brad Speakman, stretched the dry line up to the front yard, flaked it out, started masking up. We got water, and Engine 5 had stretched their line up to the front door, and somebody, I believe, off the ladder opened the storm door. The interior door was open, and as soon as they opened the storm door, basically the first floor flashed over, and we had heavy fire showing at the first floor, and the windows started to go. Brad Speakman, my nozzleman, started to push in, started knocking fire down along with Engine 5. As we entered, I was humping hose for him. As I get in, 5's nozzleman, Artie Hope, started to yell it was hot or she was burning or something. To this day, we're still not sure what the issue was. I kind of think maybe she had an opening in her gear or her hood. We took her outside. She got checked by the driver, Kevin Weems. I returned and crawled up behind Brad. On my way back in, Lieutenant Leach crossed me, and in his calm, usual, typical demeanor, hey buddy boy, got to make the second floor. We got to report a people trap. He went toward the steps. Engine 5's line went that direction with him. At this point, the first floor is knocked down. There's no visible fire. There's no what I would call high heat or anything. The fire's knocked down. I crawled up behind Brad and he said, hey, we got to make the basement. And we had a brief conversation about where it was, how we're going to get there. He started to move. And at this point, we're probably about between 8 to 10 feet in, kind of off to the left of the front door. When he said, Caesar, the floor's soft. And I started to reach for my radio, and I trust Brad explicitly. I've been to training classes for years. I've known him for 20 plus years. I started to say, are you sure? As I'm reaching for my mic to call for the evac, this is kind of all happening very fast. And now I can feel the floor start to go. My radio would not key up. It wouldn't hit the repeater. So I started screaming, expletives, get out. And I was just steadily screaming it. We're turning to leave all at the same time. Brad has a hold of me. We're going. We go out. And I feel like I'm walking uphill. Like I'm looking at the ceiling, walking uphill. We bump into Artie. And I'm trying to grab Artie's shoulder strap and push her out the door in front of me. And we're going backwards. And Brad made a conscious decision that he didn't want to pull me in the hole, so he let go. And when he let go, I got a jerk forward, and I spun around trying to grab Artie's other shoulder strap so she didn't fall all the way in. And the next thing I knew, I was outside. The only thing I can come up with that was I was still somewhat upright, and when when Joe Ryan from Ladder 2, Vinny from the squad, and Cawthray from Engine 5 all went to dive out the door, they hit me and drove me out the door. I lost Artie. I lost hold of Artie as we blew out the door. Like I said, I remember spinning to catch her, and the next thing I know, I'm laying on the pavement out front. I go to key my radio up again. I still can't hit the repeater. I stand up and I started screaming at the incident commander to call the Mayday, that we had members trapped, at which point Chief McCaffrey turned and started calling the Mayday. When the floor collapsed, it let the fire up from the basement up into the first floor. The first floor doorway is now fully involved again. There's fire out the windows. Lieutenant Tyson from the squad had pulled back, I believe, Engine 5's line to him, started playing it in the doorway, trying to knock the fire down. My driver, Kevin Weems, in a very heads-up move, brought a attic ladder up to put down in the hole so we could get down in there. At that point, we can't get in the hole. There's too much fire. The dispatcher asked Chief McCaffrey, who's the Mayday for? I came on and said it was for Speakman and where we were when it happened. And then I also said we were missing 5's nozzleman and Ladder 2 officer. I know I said it because it's on tape, but I don't physically remember forming the intent of, where are these people? It just happened so fast. I don't know. I can't justify why I called that, why I said that's who we were missing. We couldn't get in, at which point I made the decision, firefighter Greco and I. Greco was the hydrant person for Engine 5. He and I made the decision to go through the delta exposure. We went through the delta exposure, came out back, at which point SB2 was coming up the alley and Ellesmere's engine 16.5 was coming down the alley. We went to get I went to help SB2 get a line, and we ended up with 16.5's hand line. During that period of time is when the second collapse happened in the rear. I did not witness that. By the time we got the line, I got turned around and got my mask back on. The doorway, the garage door, the sliding glass door, was covered by about 3 bays worth of floor joists that had cantilevered off the back wall. There was now heavy fire in the back. We started knocking that down with the 1 3/4 hand line, and we were able to push in around that opening. With several members, at least one member from Ellesmere. There were some other members there, and I can't honestly tell you who was with me at that point. We found what I now know to be Jerry, unconscious, slumped against the Bravo wall in the basement, just inside the door. We were able to remove him to the rear, and we continued to search. We searched for an extended period of time. I don't have a good time frame for that evening. At some point, I was about halfway across the basement, and I saw a flashlight from a fireman going up the attic ladder in the front. And shortly after that, Artie Hope popped up in front of me on the other side of a refrigerator that had fallen off the first floor in one of the collapses. There were, I believe they determined, 3 refrigerators and a freezer on the first floor, and they had all fallen into the basement. Artie was conscious, recognized it was me, called me by name, and said, get me the F out of here. I wasn't able to pull her over the refrigerator. At that point, there were some members from the Mill Creek Fire Company that had come in the rear that were smaller than me, and because of the space between the top of the refrigerators and the steel joist that ran the center of the house, they were able to get over. They were able to pick her up, her hips up, and drive her over the refrigerator into my lap. At which point, several of us deployed her DRD, or drag rescue device, out of her gear, and we took her outside. There was an extended period of time after that where we were continuing to search for Lieutenant Leach. After we called for an all-stop, which is, for those that don't know, it's where you basically shut everything down and try to listen for the pass device. The pass device was heard muffled in the rear, and then we were able to uncover him from the debris that he had been buried in the second collapse, and we carried him outside.
We were all sleeping. We had a couple runs earlier in the evening. So we were all back. We can remember when the fire came in, we were pretty hot and heavy, ready to get on the truck and go. Remember going up 2nd Street, like it was yesterday, just looking over at Brad, make sure he was tightened up because he was getting masked up, make sure he was all right, make sure he's all right for his fire, because we always joked around, said because Kevin and I had a few fires under us. Brad, we all got assigned at the same time, so Brad had a fire. So we were kind of stoked that he actually was going to get ready to go to a fire, because we knew going up the hill it was going to be something, just with the reports that were coming in.
So wait, this was Brad's first
Fire. As the nozzleman on engine 1.
Tell me that really quick, 'cause I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, we had, Kevin and I had a few pretty good fires on since we got assigned there in 2016. So that morning, there was some confusion on who was supposed to be the nozzleman between Brad or myself, and we were trying to figure it out. And I just said, you know what, just have it today. Either, I can't remember if we were coming back from vacation or somebody was off, but remembering Brad, just take it, whatever it is. We'll figure the rotation out as it goes. And then we were pretty amped up going up the hill. I mean, Kevin was driving like we were going to a fire. Just remember just looking, just blink, we were making that left on Union Street, just holding on. And then pulling in to down the road, we could see it, coming up the back roads. Can't remember the road that comes back. So we were on the back side of the building. We could actually see fire, and we were looking over and looking at Brad, saying, "You're going to get something tonight. This is what we're pretty stoked about." And then I can remember jumping off, Kevin making that turn, making that right on to Lakeview Road, and jumping off, wrapping that hydrant, looking over at Chief McCaffrey, saying, "Do you see the hydrant? I can't find it," because it was hidden behind a few cars. And then I remembered, because we had a car fire there a few weeks before, a week before that or something. And remember where the hydrant was, and was able to get it hooked up. And looking up the street, just seeing fire just starting to come out the front door a little bit. Watching all them guys getting dressed and looking up the street, seeing Brad, Caesar. And then at that time, I never saw Chris and all them and Joe Ryan. They were already inside doing their thing. And then remember getting hooked up, running up the street. At that time, I looked at and that's about time I saw Brad, Caesar, and I believe it was Coffrey making that entry into the front door. And fire was starting to lick pretty good coming out of the front of the building, which is normal. And then getting my stuff squared away, getting the hydrant done. And Kevin come back, I charged the line, got him, so he was already helping move lines and stuff like that. I can remember just seeing him hustling around, getting stuff moved around, because the line was kinked up a little bit. And then coming back, grabbed my pack real quick. And at that time, I could hear Jerry on the radio asking for a line. Asking for the line out back. So I, knowing two lines off, one coming off engine 5, engine 1, already had lines coming off of them. So I said, you know what, I grabbed the 300. Kevin and I kind of started doing, he helped me a little bit to the front door, and I was trying to figure out, not knowing the buildings, I didn't know that I had to go, I was actually getting ready to bust a window to go out. And about that time, that's next thing I know, radio communication started going haywire. I was still trying to just figure out how to get this line out back to Jerry. And so we were, next thing I remember is Kevin Weems running in and just screaming at me and said, get to the front of the building. Brad fell in the basement. And then just remember trying to get the line pulled back around the front of the building, just looking and just saying, holy cow, this is not good. Just singing. You can hear him. Couldn't see him. You could hear already screaming. You could hear Brad. I can remember looking over at the time. Joe Ryan was standing there. And then about that time, I'd seen Caesar was laying on the ground. He was steaming, and I was just, it was pretty wild. And just thinking, holy cow, we got to get Brad. That's the biggest thing. At that time, that's all I could think about was I got to get my guy out. And you could hear it, and you could see it. And then I can remember Kevin charging that line and just standing at that front door and just flowing. And I remember looking over at Joe Ryan because my hands were burning so bad because I was in the front door, just sweeping, just trying to do as much as I could. just hear, you could hear Artie, and, so I remember handing Joe Ryan the nozzle for a second so I could put my gloves on, and just trying to recollect everything, trying to figure out who's missing, who's not out front, who's, and just turn around, just trying to do a quick accountability of everybody, because at that point, we didn't know who we lost. I knew I had Caesar, I knew I had the officer of our truck, but I didn't know to the extent of who else was missing. And then besides Brad, because Kevin had told me, Brad's in the basement. At that time, I remember running. I must have hit my bottle or did something because my bottle emptied. So when I went to turn it on, because I saw Jake, Craig, and Vinny Denicio at the front door masking up, getting ready to make the entry, get into the basement, and I remember just trying to turn my bottle on and nothing happening. So I ran back real quick, grabbed another pack and my mask, and ditched that. And about that time, they must have, either between the times that happened, they pulled Brad out of the basement, because I remember running past, back up, and seeing Brad laying there on the sidewalk. And I remember just hearing him say a couple words and just knowing, okay, at least we got Brad out. Now it's time. We got to try to figure out who else is in there. About that time, they went in and they were doing, I guess, the initial assessment with what's going on with Artie. And then myself, and then I believe it was firefighter DeVista, were there at the front door, going down into the basement, down the attic ladder. I can remember just getting down there and just screaming, already screaming at us, just get me out of here, get me out of here. Just remember looking at her and say, I'm trying, baby girl, I'm trying. We're trying to do it. She was pretty pinned. Her pack was pinned somehow, and there was a large dresser or something over top of her on her legs. And I can just remember just DeVista and I just trying to figure out how to get her cut out of her pack. And about that time, that's when we were trying to keep her mask on, and she ripped her mask off because her bottle emptied. And we were at the point, so we at least tried to pull her Nomex up a little bit. At least I know I did. And when I handed my knife, because DeVista had a sheetrock knife, and he was trying to cut her pack out. Nick actually, once he got his side done, I got my side done. I remember Nick just picking whatever this thing was at the time, just picking it up and suplexing it backwards off of her. At about that time, we got her free, and my bottle was running low again. So I told Nick, I said, we got her to the bottom of the ladder at that time, and they were doing a pretty good assessment. The radio traffic was going crazy, and there was no way to. So I remember coming up out of the hole, because we got her to the bottom of the ladder, and looking up at Chief Donahue at the time, and I said, she's at the bottom of the ladder. We can't get her up. We need help. Because at that, we were pretty gassed and pretty much trying to figure out how we're going to get her up. And at that time, I guess they had made some type of entry through the rear of the building, and because remember sitting there in the front, waiting for them to come back, and the guys went down through the hole. I think it was Jake and Vinny again, and them coming back up and saying she's not there. We don't know where she's at, and saying, and I'm screaming, she's at the bottom of the ladder, and that's because that's where we left her at that point. And from there it was kind of just haywire. It was just running back and forth trying to figure out who else is missing. I mean, because at that time I believe it was Caesar and somebody else pulled her out through the rear of the building. I remember, I remember vaguely of a radio communication coming across saying we pulled firefighter, Hope out the rear of the building, getting her into the medic unit. And, just at that time I kind of walked back, and I can remember going over and seeing Lieutenant Tyson sitting in front of the ladder, Lieutenant Cawthray sitting in front of the ladder, and I can't think of, that's the two faces I can remember saying, and just saying, because they're still saying there's people inside. I'm trying to think, who else, I didn't think Lieutenant Leach was in there still, and I didn't know something had happened to Jerry at that time either. And then, once the collapse kind of happened, it was kind of just haywire, just trying to figure out, what to do next. It just felt like a whole different, there's something going on in the back and there's something going on in the front. And I kind of committed myself in staying out front. I didn't know, the extent of what was going on out back. They still had people inside until, it kind of was said to us that, Chris Leach is still inside, and that they had pulled, I had thought that when they had pulled somebody out, that it wasn't, I didn't know it was Jerry, so I thought it was him. And then I just remember looking, finally making contact with Kevin. I'm like, Kevin, who else is missing? Just trying to make sense of everything that happened, and just that I was, at that time there was a person that kind of knew, a good family member. So I had said, because I didn't have my phone or anything, and I just made sure, I said, just text my parents, let them know I'm okay, and then that's really got the gist of my night, from there. And it was a blur after that.
We knew engine 6 wasn't in service that night, so we just did our thing. We got on the truck fast, got on the engine, and came out of 2nd and West on engine 1, and away we went, knowing we were the first to engine, or we're more than likely going to be first arriving. So we get going. I remember going down 2nd Street talking to Caesar, who's at the time Lieutenant Haley, about hydrants and which way to go. It's pretty tight back in there in Canby Park, Prospect, Rodman, Seneca, Lakeview. It's it's almost a crapshoot. Pretty much knew. I wasn't sure which way the ladder went, but as we come up down, we go straight down 2nd Street. It's pretty easy runs, like 3 turns. And we get to 2nd and Union and make a left on Union. We've got our plan. We're going to go all the way down to the bottom side of Canby Park, which is Rodman Road, and come back up Lakeview. That ended up being, a couple blocks out, we heard Lieutenant Leach, give the conditions, because in that neighborhood, it's kind of unique in the city. You have alleys. And I mean, not to mention this fire, you could see it was a fire, but even as we got closer, you really saw, the fire blowing out the back, down the back side of those their long rows of houses there. So we had our plan. We're going to grab the hydrant at Rodman and Lakeview and just forward lay in. Come to find out, that's the way the ladder went, which makes sense in hindsight because it's really tight on the top end. It's like almost like can't make it tight at some points. But so Chris gives fire showing from the rear. We all hear that. We're ready to go. Like I said, it's great communication. You had Caesar, myself, Roberts on the hydrant, and Brad. One of the things I do remember, besides is the hydrant being at the corner of Rodman and Lakeview doesn't sit exactly on the corner. It's actually like up a little ways on Lakeview. So like I'm like flipping out because things change. You know how it is. I mean, like you look at a map, it's a constant effort to keep your maps and district surveyed up to date, but it's important, and I just didn't know. So like I'm looking and I'm like, I tell Dave, I'm like, it's somewhere, I can't find it. Like it's middle of the night for one, and they block hydrants there a lot in cars for two. That didn't end up being the case, but so we stopped the layout. Like I said, the ladder's there, they got fire showing. At some point in time, Chris has come back, Lieutenant Leach, and said, you know, there's a report of people trapped. And this is 3 in the morning and there's people everywhere. Roberts gets out, drops the hose, we take off up Lakeview, and those are long blocks. I mean, I think they go to like 1970 something. They start at 1900. So I mean, we're at 27. That's why I go in there. We're like, all right, it's going to be closer to the bottom side. It's 27, not by much, but we arrive, we pull up. It's so tight, but it's enough room a little bit where I angle as much as I can a little bit to let the officer and the guys out of the truck, and we start doing what we're supposed to do, finish completing the water supply and stretching the hose line. I think initially Brad was pulling the 200 foot. As a driver, I'm usually all about, you know, taking care of helping them get the line off the truck. This particular incident was a little bit, well, it's a lot common for many urban areas. There was people literally everywhere, and it's a little unusual for 3 a.m. But you know, I guess with the fire, you know, so many neighbors were awakened. But Brad gets the 200, like half off the truck, maybe something like that. And Lieutenant Haley tells him to, you know, I went to 300. And so they switch and they get that going, and I'm right there. And I kind of, at some point, I'm back and forth. I think I saw a coupling, 200 maybe, might have been 300, but I think 200 foot, can't remember exactly, of supply hose in the street. But I could see the coupling, and I knew I couldn't connect it to my truck without another little short shot or pulling a whole nother section off, something. So I either got that out real quick and then went to help the stretch. And I think that's what happened. I had enough time to get the short section of supply hose that I was going to need to fill the gap to connect to the truck when I broke the layout pack. But in the middle of that, I stopped because I knew I had to get that line in service with them. So I go, and it was just, I mean, it was not pretty, if I could use any term to describe it. And not pretty in the sense that there's a lot of obstacles stacked up against us. For one, that street, the cars, the people too actually were, you know, the hose stretch was not pretty for the attack line. It was a lot of hose, you know. Unfortunately, the way it had been stowed on the engine wasn't one of the things I was in favor of for deployment, for ease of deployment. But anyway, that was what we were working with. A flat-loaded 300 foot of hose, and it all just seemed like 300 foot went. You know, Brad tried to manage it the best he could, but it was just it was a lot to navigate around all these cars and these people, and then the people were trying to help us because at some point, like, there was just so much hose. We finally got it going, and like I said, we're probably talking about a matter of seconds, but still, it was something that, you know, wasn't a walk in the park. People were hollering, you know, they're telling us people were trapped and to get the kids out, are all the kids out? Nobody knew. There was just too many people, and the chief's right behind us. Chief runs out of our station, so he was in front of us on the way there, and he pulled over because he knew we had to get in, which was a good move. But so he's coming up the street behind us with all this going on. We're getting the line in service. Tight street, cars both sides. We get it off the rig, across the bumpers of the cars and on the sidewalk, and then had to work against front yard fences down a narrow sidewalk with people everywhere, probably. And like I said, the ladder stopped pretty like dead center of the house, like they do, and without blocking the back of their ladder truck. Since we followed them in, we caused us to stop like 30, 40 more foot short because they had to leave room for the ladders to come out. So anyway, in the midst of all that, we get probably the front 150 handled, and they're looking golden. So I come back to the engine, and I'm running back and forth, and I knew I still had a little bit of a mess there. I tried to tell some of the citizens to help and this and that, and a couple of them did. They did a good job, actually. We were whacking some cars with some couplings. So they called for water. Well, right when I get back to the engine, Lieutenant Haley, Brad, got the nozzle and the line up through like the sidewalk to the front door. And at this time, I remember it was just nasty smoke. And I remember saying, this is going to be a tough one. And so as I get back to the engine, I see water coming up the street in the 5-inch hose. And I'm like, oh shit, like this is bad. Like it's already intense, but like I hadn't made the connection, the last connection. Like I said, I think when I pulled up and I real quick got that short shot of hose out and I connected it to my intake and like threw it out. Because I knew I had to go back, break the hose that we laid out, and then connect that to the short shot, and I hadn't done that yet. And I was like, well, Dave, and then I started like really got like so anxious. I was scrambling to run to the back because I saw the hose charging, and I get back there and I'm like, the biggest relief in the world was that Dave had run up a couple hundred feet because he knew I was doing the whole hose line deal and made that connection. And I literally I was like, oh my God, thank God. We're not going to like send water and all this hose that's not going into our fire pump on our truck. So I was like, oh my God, I see Dave running up. I'm like, oh my God, Dave. I said, good job, man. Like, you know, when Dave was a rookie and Keenan Engine 1, we, you know, we're really good buddies, and, you know, he knew his job and he handled it that time, so, you know, well, all the time, but especially that time when it scared me to death. But, so Dave handled the water supply, that final connection. We got water going to the truck. I was charging the line right then anyway. And they called for water a couple times, and that was when I really saw some bad like kinks in our attack line. Now the line that Brad pulled off the truck, you know, under a couple tires. At one point, it was between like somehow somebody's front yard. I guess some of the citizens tried to help and they were trying to do the right thing. It got between I remember a front yard gate and a fence. And I mean, I was just flipping tangled hose, flipping it and pulling it and yanking on it, and to the point where I think we bought ourselves, you know, some extra hose. And at this point, Dave's coming up. Like I said, he's got all his stuff, and he's going to get a second line. Like they're flowing water. Like engine 5, you know, they arrived kind of like right behind us because, believe it or not, they were able to make the turn into the neighborhood from the top side, which is usually really tough. And they actually weren't far because for the time it took us to have to go around, stop, kind of figure out where to stop to hit the hydrant and all this, and come up and then stop short of the ladder truck. They pretty much came in, made a quick right and a left, and laid straight down to the bumper of the ladder truck, which was right at the front door. So their engine company was closer to the front door. So their crew, you know, I don't know how their stretch went, but it went okay enough for them to be kind of right there behind engine 1. Engine 1 gets water, and they're flowing water and this and that. And at this point, you know, the ladder crew's inside. Chief, McCaffrey was the battalion chief. He was working for Chief Shaw, I guess, or something like that, overtime maybe. Chief Shaw was our normal chief, rest in peace. But McCaffrey at one point says that everybody's out of the house, and I remember like talking to him about it. And we're like, okay, well, we still got a ripping fire, so still got to put the fire out. But before getting those reports, okay, like. Sometimes that changes the playing field on how aggressive you are. You know, it's like somebody says, "Oh, well, there's people trapped up there," or then some people say, "No, they're trapped in like that window right there." It's like, you know, kind of different levels of risk assessment. But anyway, that wasn't known to obviously the firefighters that were already inside, which the last known information they had was people were up there, children at that. But Dave gets up to the engine, pulls a second hose line, because at this point, the backup engine company's there. I'm like, all right, we need to get to the rear of this place, like ASAP. And I don't know if nobody's even arriving in the rear yet. Or maybe the chief back there by now. I don't know the exact timeline. But anyway, I knew we were going there regardless. I mean, that's the fire in a below grade, level division. It's 2 in the front, 3 in the rear. Dave stretches the 200, him and I. Now, we stretched the 200 like flawlessly. We made it work, but it was also because we were closer to the exposure building. It might have been if you're looking at the house on the right, the Delta D1 exposure, D2, one of those 2 buildings, I think it was the one right next to it actually, went in. So like our engine was just a tad closer, but there was like 1 or 2 yards without a fence there. It worked, or maybe that was like the 3rd or 4th one down, somewhere along there. There was a little bit more space, I remember. Dave gets it all off the truck, and then we just throw it down, but it was a little more orderly, so not much hose. Dave gets in going to the, we're going to go through the house next door. I mean, and you have to go in the front, go all the way to the back, turn around, come down the steps that are going back towards the front of the house, and then turn around and go out the rear. That's a lot of hose. So we're probably going to have to extend the line, more than likely. So he was on his way down there, and it was pretty smoke-filled. None of us had our mask on, nothing, but it was filled enough that we couldn't navigate through the house very easily. And he gets like going down the steps from the first floor back to the front and the side in the exposure building, and I'm coming up with extra hose to throw it in this house so we could keep moving along. And that's when the collapse happened, because the fire just, blew out. It was, it was pretty incredible. So you felt it, heard it, and didn't realize it in like the first 2 seconds, but probably on like second 3, I was like, this is a big, big problem. So I'm hollering at Dave at this point. We've overcome a lot of things already in this fire. There's still people out there, like, at this point, that escalated them. I heard people say all kinds of stuff. They were praying for our guys, and they watch. I mean, they were sitting there watching people just go in there, go, 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 and then they see that, and they're hollering at us. I hollered at Dave to come back out, because at this point, like, something bad, obviously, like I said, it was just, and in the moment, you don't really stop and feel like that, or I didn't, at least. Like, I knew it was a big problem, but it wasn't like I was like, and never once was I like, oh my gosh, they're done. Like this. I just knew it was a big problem, and we had a lot of work to go do. And Dave came back. I hauled ass back to pull the charge of his hose line, because I didn't know what the status of those hose lines were, or who was where, or nothing. Dave comes back and gets water, and he starts putting the fire out. He starts fighting the fire from the doorway with a bunch of people. There was people there, and so that leading up to the collapse, that was like the course of events that I remember. Some difficulties with the hose stretch, the water supply going well because of some forward thinking by Dave as the hydrant man to just do more than just, he did more than what was the minimum for his riding position, I'll put it that way. He had the forethought to complete everything, because he knew I was busy. We knew things were going crazy. So that's leading up to the moment where it collapsed.
So as stated, we were the dispatch as a second due engine company. Our SOP state that second due engine company, we're going to drop a 5-inch supply line, a secondary supply line. So that's what we did. We heard engine 1, they went to the low side. So we went to the high side, and we dropped a line at New Street and Lakeview. So essentially our hydrant man got out, wrapped the hydrant, and we stretched down probably 500-600 feet to the front of ladder 2, who was already positioned. Engine 1 was behind them. I advised my nozzle person, Artie Hope, to grab a pre-connected 200-foot 2-inch line off of our piece, and we were going to stretch in and support engine 1. So I noticed that when we were masking up, getting ready, noticed that there was fire showing first and second floor. It was a 2-story middle of the road, which is something that we fight on an everyday basis. That's like our bread and butter. So we got masked up, started to advance the hose line up the sidewalk, noticed that engine 1 was also there. And at that point, Artie said that she was having problems with her hood or her mask, so I was like, that's fine, get it figured out. I'm going to start heading inside. So I don't know if engine 1 got in first or if we went in first, but we got a quick knock on it and proceeded inside. And at that point, I believe engine 1 went to the left, so they were making their way in trying to find basement access. So I was going up to the second floor. I had the nozzle in my hand. I was standing there, wanted to make a push to the second floor. At that point, Chris Leach was off to my left, and I heard him just say, hey, buddy boy, we got to get upstairs. And it was at that moment, no more than 30 seconds in, that there was the collapse. And what I remember most was complete silence, and then just a wall of orange. And then I just felt the heat. And instinctively, I turned. I don't even know if I turned left, turned right, but I guess only about 2 feet of the floor joist hadn't burned out, so I was lucky enough to be able to turn around. And, I was 2 or 3 feet inside, and I just remember people just pulling and yanking everybody out, throwing us down the steps. And, I get outside, and I stand up, and at that point, Caesar Haley he said, engine 1 nozzleman, he's down there. If he's not out here, he's down there. And I said the same thing about Chris. I said, if he's not out here, he's down there, because he was just in my ear. And then, unfortunately, we could hear Artie screaming, so we knew at that point that there were 3 people at least trapped or had fallen into the basement. So at that point, it feels like minutes, but it was seconds that we were just kind of formulating a game plan. And, the Mayday was called. And, at that point, I think Jay Craig had crawled in on his belly to the doorway, and he could see Brad. I looked around, and fortunately there was I don't know where the nozzle came from, started hitting, trying to knock some fire down as much as we could. And somebody else was knocking it down, so I put it down. And Kevin Weems at that point, who was the driver of the first 2 engine company, had thrown a attic ladder. Just smart enough, forethought to throw a ladder there. So we grabbed it. Jay Craig threw it down there, and Jake and Vinny, they assisted Brad with getting out. I think Brad had, jumped on something, but they pulled him out. And I just remember thinking to myself, if we can get him out quick, hopefully Artie and Chris will be right there. And so we pulled him out, and I said they were still hitting the fire, and we were kind of tending to Brad. And I looked down, and I had ended up being 2nd-degree burns on my wrist. And at that point, the battalion chief told me, he's like, listen, you go get checked out. And I was kind of like, okay. And so at that point, my night was kind of done. And I just remember thinking that I was sitting there and I was getting tended to, and I'm thinking, they're going to get these guys out quick. They're going to pull them out. We're going to do what we usually do, going from the rear, knock it down. And at that point, I didn't realize that there was the secondary collapse, and it wasn't until later on that I found out that, there was a secondary collapse, and that Chris and Jerry had both passed away. And then, of course, I knew Artie was, down there. I didn't know how bad her situation was. And, that was kind of it for me. I mean, after Brad was pulled out, there wasn't much that I did. And so, that was about it.
When the call came out for 1927 Lakeview Road, I'll never forget it, because I was running down the stairs at 5 saying this is probably going to be a fire, because of the time, where it was, it just seemed odd. So on the way out the door, we knew it was going to be a working fire when we got halfway there, because the ladder went on scene with fire showing. So we rounded the corner off of Pennsylvania Avenue onto Union Street, and I've never done this before, and I've never done it again. I don't know why I did it that night, but I remember taking my air pack out of the holder and laying it out on the floor, like completely laying it out so I could be ready to go to grab it. And Artie looked at me, and goes, "What are you doing?" I said, I'll never forget it. I said, when I'm done hitting this hydrant, I'm coming back to this truck, grabbing this pack and going in and getting some. And to this day, I don't know if I regret saying that or what, but I don't know why I did that. But so we pulled up. Engine 1 actually popped out onto Union Street in front of us. So we kind of met each other on our way down Union Street to Lakeview. They pulled in, went around to the bottom half of Lakeview. We went to the top. They dropped me off at the top. I pulled the hose off from the back, wrapped a hydrant, and I told Junior Lopez, the driver at the time, to go ahead and go. So he went down the street. I hooked the hydrant up. I waited for him to call for water, and once he called for water, I turned the hydrant on. And it was at that point, I said, all right, I'm good here. He's good. He has his water. I started to walk up the street towards the fire. And I could see in the sky. I could see the smoke. I could see it was going pretty good. Halfway up the street is when I heard Lieutenant Leach give the Mayday. So now at this point, I'm running up the street. By the time I get up the street, Kevin Weems meets me, and Kevin's one hell of a fireman, and he never loses his cool, always has his composure, but there was something in his face that said something was totally wrong. He looked at me and said, "Jimmy, you need to get in there and get these guys out." So that's when I got my pack that I had laid out on 5. I donned it, put it on, and on my way up to the front of the house is when I saw Lieutenant Haley Caesar came rolling out the front door. And I remember seeing him, and he looked at me and said, "I got to get my guy. I got to get my guy." And I was like, "Who? Who do you need? What do you need to get?" He goes, "I lost my nozzleman. I lost Brad. He went down." I said, "All right, so let's go get him." He goes, "All right, we're going to go into the house next door." And he still had his face piece off at this time because he had just came out. So we went in the house next door. We went down the basement. It's real smoky in this house. No fire, a little warm, nothing too bad, but we couldn't see very well. I remember passing the door and I hit a wall in the basement. I said, "Caesar, we went too far." I said, "We got to go back. The door to the outside's back here." And at that point, he took a knee because he had his face piece off, his little smoky. I went and found the door, and then I found the other door that led outside. Once I got outside and knew I was outside, I came back. I grabbed him. I said, "Hey, let's go." I picked him up. I said, "Let's go. We got to go outside. We can't stay here." We got out back, and once we got outside, the lieutenant, Chief Curlin was out back, and that's the only person I saw. And unbeknown to me, that's where the guys, the Team 2, I think it was, from Squad 4 at the time, which was Jerry Fickus and Terry Tate, had already gone into the back of the house. And I'm looking, and there's this fire pouring out of the back of the house on the bottom floor, the first floor. So he says, "They're in there." I said, "All right." So I followed my way in, and it was weird. It was something I've never seen before. There was a lot of fire everywhere, but there was a path that led me right to where they were, and they were dragging somebody. So Tate was dragging, and Jerry was kind of pushing. So I basically went up to him and said, "Tate, I got him. I got this side." So we started pulling, and Jerry's doing a typical rip move. He's got his head between his legs, and he's pushing, and Tate and I are pulling. I ended up falling over something when we were coming backwards, and we might have been less than 10 feet from coming out. And later I found out what it was that I tripped and fell over. It was where a load-bearing wall used to be. And later come to find it, which is why things fell. But I fell backwards over the wall. So when I got back up, I wasn't able to re-grip myself to who we were dragging. So I grabbed onto Tate, and I started pulling. As I was doing that, Curlin's outside yelling, "It's coming down, get out." And I could feel debris falling. I actually looked up at one point and stuff started falling. So I just basically still held on to Tate and rolled out and pulled. And I got out completely. So we were close, but Tate was halfway. So I grabbed the rest of him and pulled him. And as I did that and got back up is when the second collapse happened from the first floor. The back of the house came down. It was at that time that I thought that we would lose both people, and we did. We unfortunately lost firefighter Fickus, and the person who I thought we were dragging was Brad, was not. It actually was Chris Leach. So it was at that point that I believe Ellesmere Fire Company pulled up at that point. They had a crew in house. They were less than a mile and a half down the road. And they got a hose off and started fighting the fire to back it out so we could actually start digging through the debris. I remember at that time the guys from SB2 were there, and I believe it was Captain Carazada, myself, Tate, and I can't remember who else. I think firefighter Rodriguez at the time, Nick Rodriguez, started pulling debris off, and we were able to get to Jerry quick. It seemed like forever, but it was quick, and we were able to get him out. But he was in cardiac arrest when we got him out. I remember dragging him across the street, and we took his gear off, and the medics started doing their thing, and I started assisting them. But it was at that point we loaded him onto a stretcher, and I walked with him the entire way, all the way back out to Union Street, and loaded him into an ambulance. So after that, I walked back to the scene, and there was a lot going on in the back. I walked around to the front at that point, and that's when I saw Brad's gear on the front yard. Unbeknown to me, firefighter Jake Craig, Vinny Denizio, and Nick DeVista had gotten Brad out through the front. I never even knew where he was. I never even knew that happened. When I tell people about this, I tell them it's a tale of two fires. There was an incident in the front, and there was an incident in the back. I eventually rehabbed at the front of the truck where I saw Terry Tate, Lieutenant Cawthray, who was my officer that night, and Lieutenant Tyson. They were all being just taken care of, and EMS was taking care of some of them. I sat there for about 5 minutes or so, and then firefighter Roberts and I looked at each other and said, well, we got to get this done. We got to get one more person out. Because I didn't figure out either until later, Artie was already being taken out the back while I was taking Jerry up to the ambulance. I didn't even know that she came out the back, didn't even know who got her out. So we went back, we started digging through debris, and it was a while. And Chris was buried under so much stuff, we barely could hear his pass device. It wasn't until a short time later that eventually some guys were digging through, and I think somebody came upon a Scotch light of what's on our gear, and they could see a nameplate, and that's when we found him. We eventually were able to get him out, and somebody from, I guess, Ellesmere again, they drove to the firehouse, took down their American flag, and brought it out to the scene within minutes. So we were able to drape it over top of Chris when we brought him out so we could load him up and so he could be going on his way. I never in a million years imagined I would go through something like this. And I never want to do it again if possible. But it's part of our job. It's inherent that it's a dangerous job we have, but I don't think any of us anticipated that happening that night. This was a typical row house fire for the Wilmington Fire Department. It's something we thought we could go right in and take care of. I don't think it ever crossed anybody's mind that this place was coming down or that it was going to collapse. I certainly didn't, I'll tell you that right now. I had no idea it was going to happen. But unfortunately it did. I just hope in the future that, we can learn from this, and we can adapt, and we can overcome.
The initial report, what I thought was said by the dispatcher was, please, my basement is on fire. I believe later it was said that she believes her basement was on fire. But generally, if somebody's given a please help me or please this is happening, there's a good shot that it's happening. Firefighter Jake Craig was driving that day. He was moving pretty good. We actually kind of had not a joke, but we talked earlier in the day with our crew and Jerry about a movie and about bracing yourself for impact. And it was funny going to this working fire. We had a pretty good idea it was going to be a fire, and Jerry joked about it, and we all kind of laughed. I do remember there was a speed sign, like a WPD speed sign on Union Street, maybe like 8th and Union, and we joked about how we just blew past it, and it was, the numbers, I don't even know what they read. The initial reports from Fire Board and then Lieutenant Leach at the time went on scene with a working fire. Gave fire showing from the rear as they made their way around. As we came in, we came into Canby Park, made a right on the new road, and you could see down the alley before we got to Lakeview Road, you could see a good fire going. It was about halfway through the block, and it was well beyond the roof line coming out of the basement. We made our way, actually, down past Lakeview, down Seneca, and back around to Rodman, and we were actually on Lakeview and Rodman is where we ended up. Jerry and Tate headed for the rear. That was generally the operations for the Team 2 of the squad to go to the Charlie side. And Lieutenant Tice and I made our way up to the front of the building. Jake was driving, so he was getting his equipment on, and he followed shortly after. Coming up to the scene, the engine, both engine 5 and engine 1 had what seemed to be a pretty good knock on the fire. There was no visible fire when we came up to the scene. They had 2 lines in service, and what we thought was they were getting a pretty good knock on the first floor fire. We did know that there was fire in the rear, just from the reports, and eventually Jerry Fickus did give a report of fire in the rear. We knew it. We kind of knew the layout of the building, and we could see it coming in. At one point, it was believed to be Lieutenant Leach gave that there might be a report of subjects still trapped inside. When we came up to the front of the building, Chief McCaffrey told Lieutenant Tyson and I to head to the second floor for a primary search. There's still reports of people inside. There was decent smoke coming out of the first floor. The engine's already made the push, and we masked up and headed into the building. I entered first. It was not uncommon, just for a more experienced group of people. The nozzleman or firefighter might enter before the officer, just because we were at closer experience levels than a typical engine. I made my way into the building knowing that the layout would probably be, the stairs would be to the right. There was members, what we found out was probably Lieutenant Cawthray and possibly Artie were on the base of the stairs, most likely trying to head to a second floor to protect the search. They were blocking the access, trying to get to the second floor. I made my way to the stairwell to try to either go above or through the railing of the stairs to make the second floor. Right about that time, I kind of heard some talk about the floor being soft and get out, but it was just initial conversations, and I kind of thought, all right, maybe they're still trying to figure out. And then I heard a significant scream from Caesar, at the time, Lieutenant Haley on engine 1, telling everybody to get out. And right about the same time, you could feel the floor go. I could feel it even close to the base of the stairs. And obviously the guys further into the building could feel it, but I could feel it start to give. Fortunately, because I was making my way to the stairs, I was standing, and I was able to directly turn around and make my way outside. Once I made my way outside, I turned around, and I just remember just a crowd of people diving out the door. So I could see Caesar, and he was struggling to get out. And then once he got out, I remember the best way to describe it, how I can describe it, and other guys there could describe it, is most people watching this would probably understand the cover of Backdraft, where it's just fire engulfed of flames and a silhouette. And that's what I remember seeing, and I believe that was Brad Speakman going into the basement. It was kind of mayhem. Everybody who could make it out made it out. And at that point, the fire just got bigger and was blowing out the front door. I just remember Lieutenant Tyson, who was my boss on Squad 4, pulling one of the 2-inch hand lines back out. And all I can remember thinking to myself is, please let this nozzle still be attached. I hope it didn't burn through. I hope we can have it. And luckily, the nozzle came up. And Lieutenant Tyson started knocking down fire. He He was just putting, whether it was in the basement, at that point the first floor I lit back off, and he was just knocking fire down. As that was going on, I immediately went to the left side of the building towards the B side and went to a basement window to see what I could find there as Lieutenant Tyson was knocking down fire. There was a board covering the basement window. I took the board off, and all I can remember either seeing and feeling is floor joists in front of the window, because the collapse, when they fell, there was so much debris and floor joists that there was no way that we were making it through the basement window. After looking in there and yelling and see if we could hear anything or see anything, I just remember, the next thing I remember is looking over, and Jake Craig was at the door on his belly leaning in for whether he was yelling or had a hold of anybody could see. It ended up being Brad. And I remember him starting to come out with Brad, pull him up out of the building. And I just immediately went over to help finish pulling him out the rest of the way. And we kind of got him to the sidewalk, just enough out of the reach of the building. And we kind of left him there. Kevin Weems was driving engine 1, came up and started taking his gear off. Brad always laughs. We always laugh together and say, "You guys just left me by myself in the middle of the lawn." And we say, "Well, Brad, we had to keep going." So as Brad sat there on the ground, burnt and black, and his gear was blistered, there was still kind of mayhem. We didn't really know who was inside, who was available, and I kind of looked around, and Lieutenant Tyson was still on a hand line. It was myself and Jake Craig. At that point, they had a decent amount of fire knocked down, and I could hear Artie screaming in the basement, just yelling and screaming. Chief McCaffrey was kind of busy. There was a lot going on. People were talking to him, trying to get to him on the radio. Some other guys were either burnt or injured, or kind of took a step back and were just shocked by what was going on. And Brad had just come out of the basement. Artie was still in the basement, and Chris was still in the basement. So it was really, at that point, myself, Jake Craig, and Lieutenant Tyson, who were kind of still operating. The RIT was coming from Southbridge. I don't know at this point if they're on scene. We have a lot of guys injured, people still trapped, and I just thought to myself, I could hear Artie. Kevin Weems had put a ground ladder, folding attic ladder down to the basement, and I made the decision to go down the basement. I wasn't with a RIT team. What I did have was Jake Craig, my partner, who we'd worked together, been in a lot of fires. He knew I was going. I knew he wasn't going to let me be down there by myself if needed be, or, I was comfortable enough with my experience at that point to give it a shot to go. I chose to go, which is an easy decision for me and for most firemen, to go. Your friends are down there hurt, injured, burning, and you got to go. You're all that's left to you. I had to make the decision. I chose to go. I made my way down the attic ladder, and as I made my way down, it was kind of hairy. It's falling a little bit. There's stuff everywhere. It's starting to slide. I think even at one point it slid so far they thought it went down, and they asked for a second attic ladder. I made my way down the attic ladder and immediately turned left, and so that would be that's essentially going down and turn completely left, and I would be facing the front of the building, and just to the right of where the door would be, if I'm facing the front yard from the basement, was Artie. She was conscious, she was screaming, yelling, and there was just stuff everywhere. There was debris and pieces of flooring, floor joists. There was so much stuff you couldn't imagine. I remember moving a couple things and just trying to tell her, try to free yourself the best you can. We're working on it. I'm working to get you, but try your best to free yourself. She was moving and talking, which is a good sign, but there was still a lot of work to do. I did key up my radio, but we were having a lot of radio transmission problems that night. Nothing got out. So I worked a little bit to try and do the best I can to get her free. And I realized that this probably wasn't going to be something that I could handle right now by myself with limited people here and not many people even know I was down there. I had already been operating inside, if only a short amount of time. When we got out of the building, I was still on air in a high stress situation. My air was, I don't know what it was at that point, but I chose to leave and go back and say and tell command where she was, that I located her, you know, what needed to happen, how stuck she was. Very, very tough decision. It's an easy decision to go, and it's a very tough decision to leave, but sometimes it's necessary because at that point, if I chose to stay and the ladder falls or I have less air than I thought, now the problem gets even worse. You know, at the time I didn't know it was going to be extended operation, but it ended up being, you know, I wasn't going to get her by myself, but at the time I didn't know. I made my way back up the ladder, let the chief know, hey, she's right here down the ladder, quick U-turn, and she's at the bottom of the stairs, or at the ladder, but there's a lot of debris. I switched out. I believe I got on, then manned the hand line, and Jake Craig went down. And that went on for a couple, I believe Dave Roberts went down at one point, Nick DeVista went down at one point. You know, it was time to that was all that was there at that point. To send more guys, I remember Chief McCaffrey looking at my bottle and said, no, go switch out. At one point, I do remember getting a transfill and bringing it up to the scene. I didn't know, what, you know, if it was going to be extended operation. It didn't get utilized, but I did bring the transfill up. When I went to switch my bottle, I ran into Terry Tate, he had been burnt. You could just tell he was kind of, you know, just lost in his mind. He didn't mention anything about Jerry. He just said, you know, just kind of looked at him and said, hey, I gotta get another bottle. And that was it. I remember I went back up to the front of the scene, and I think at that point they had gotten her out, or they had removed her from the back. And what we thought was at the point that maybe it was done. You know, Artie was out, we got Brad out. What we didn't know at the time that Chris was still in there, and Jerry and Tate at one point had been in there. That's pretty much my extent of the firefight or the Mayday. We did get sent to rehab, and I remember Lieutenant Tyson saying, we lost Jerry, and I kind of like laughed because Jerry was the guy who would be like still inside pulling ceiling or doing something. And I kind of thought, oh, Jerry found himself something to do. And they said, no, Jerry's dead. Jerry died. And we didn't even realize that he had been in there. And we all just were kind of in shock. And at this point, we had removed we had removed Artie, we had removed Brad, and they sent us to rehab, and you know, they tell us about Jerry, and then I distinctly remember Chief Donahue coming back down and said, guys, we can't find Chris. So by the time, this far into it, they're just putting it all together of who they pulled out and who went in, that Chris Leach still hadn't been located. So we went back. Luckily, a lot of the fire was out, and we went back down and searched, and we were just looking. We didn't have even a clue to where he could have been. We searched in the front of the building, and eventually they let us know out front that they had found him and pulled his body out. But after that, it was kind of just, that was the end of it. It was a eventful night. Hopefully we never have to deal with it. I just remember like going to a fire with 5 of us, and we left with 3. One was hurt, one was unfortunately died, and it was just a unique situation. And that's just my take on it. It's kind of hard to get timelines on it because so many different things happen and so many different people operated in different areas, and it was such a small building, it's hard that you can't place maybe 2 people possibly 5 or 10 feet apart that didn't even know it. So it's a very unique situation, and it's pretty much the extent of my operations on the scene.
Obviously being middle of the night, tones came in, and it definitely, from the tone initial dispatch, it definitely seemed like a working fire. Also with people trapped potentially. So kind of had that feeling from the get-go that you were definitely going to work. The ride there, the path for us, route of travel, was pretty straightforward. So there was really no confusion there for us. The whole ride over there, it was just kind of, from my perspective, was listening to the radio traffic and trying to take in whatever we could take in, you know, just to benefit us in terms of where we're going initially, in terms of once we get off the truck. It seemed like there was a lot of confusion once we were even on Union Street as far as people were in the house or people were out of the house. So I do remember that being a little bit of an unknown initially. But to some extent, that doesn't change, to me, it didn't change what our assignment was or what we were going to try and accomplish on our truck. I think as soon as we came into the neighborhood, we came by Lakeview Road, and as we were coming up to that even, you could really see a decent amount of fire out the back and potentially out the top. It was hard to say whether it was through the roof or it was just extension out the back type, but we knew we had a fair amount of fire. My initial plan wasn't even to drive down Lakeview. We knew that engine one had taken a hydrant on the bottom side, and our initial thought is usually, for me anyway, was as a third due engine company or rescue or squad, whatever you want to call us, was to target that first hydrant, because that way we have an option to put our rig out of the way because they're already there. So we came all the way around, and I know it was pretty tight, but we got through, and we parked on a corner of Lakeview, and from there, the other 4 guys on the truck were off and running. I was driving, so I still had to pack up. We were in a reserve truck at that time, so my pack was in the rear compartment. I had my radio on, and it was just kind of monitor traffic while I'm getting dressed so that I could better, I was kind of a utility person. So based on that radio communication, it gave me an idea of where I might be most useful. So I remember hearing a seaside report with heavy fire, electrical lines down and that kind of thing. And so that was just kind of in my bank that, okay, we've got a fair amount going on in the back of the house. I could kind of peek up and know that we had a fair amount going on in the front of the house. So my initial response was to come just up the street to the front of the house. Probably the time I started to make the turn into the yard area is whenever everybody started bailing out. I guess I was kind of going the opposite direction of everybody because I was just getting up to the scene. So my initial thought process there was everybody's coming out, find a hand line, and start trying to put a fire out. It was about that time that the first collapse happened. From that point, for me, it was flow water. We knew we had people in the basement, so flow water, and my brain kind of immediately flipped into trying to formulate any sort of plan to rescue and still put fire out. So whenever that happened, you know, I think what happened in the back of the house was kind of, in the front we kind of became unaware of, but for us, the initial thought process there was start to come up with a plan. So that's kind of what happened. And then from that point on, it became more of, like I said, a plan of how do we get people out of the basement? We got to continue to fight fire and that kind of thing. But like I said, upon initial arrival, definitely knew we had a fair amount of fire, and there was still confusion on whether or not people were inside. So for Squad 4, that definitely meant search and rescue. That was our priority at that point in time. Well, for me, it was water, and while that kind of was happening, it was to continue and come up with how are we going to make a rescue? How are we going to give them a means of out if they can? And my initial reaction was a ladder. So I just remember calling for a ladder, and that ladder showed, I don't know who brought it, but it showed up very quickly. And so to me, it was a ladder goes down into this whole area, and if somebody's there, they can use it. If not, we're going to go down and use it. At that point in time, I know that another firefighter on my shift or on my truck, Vinny Denicio, he had kind of, I believe at this point, bumped over, and it was kind of we were going to go into a joint effort, I guess. But Brad was, you could hear him. I was going to go down and try and find, but like I said, briefly on there before even going downstairs, down that ladder, you could hear him. He was able to prop himself up a little bit on something, and I was able to basically get a hold of his SCBA handle on his harness or on his pack. I think after he came out, it turned into we could hear one other person down there, Artie, and it just became kind of a rescue mission. Unfortunately, there was a lot of work to be done, but as far as everything else that happened, with like in the back of the house and stuff, I could tell you I was not aware of anything until pretty far into it, if not the aftermath, but I was unaware of anything that happened in the back of the house until we were kind of sent to rehab. And at that point in time, my impression was we kind of got a little bit more fire to put out, but we're in better shape than we were.
I was actually off duty that night. I was at my ex-girlfriend's house at the time. I was assistant chief in Newport, so I was on my way home. I would turn my radio on, kind of see what's going on in the county, and I heard Medic 7 getting dispatched to the scene for a house fire, subjects trapped in Canby Park, which is 4 blocks from where I lived at the time. So kind of just went over there, hey, to see what the guys had got, and as soon as I got there, that's when I heard the Maydays get called. I had my gear in my truck at the time because it was the end of September. We had to have our gear washed by October 1st, so immediately grabbed it, ran 2.5 blocks down to the front of the house where I met up with Deputy Chief Donahue at the time. Said, hey, Chief, I'm off duty. Do you want me to go into service? To his response was, we'll grab an effing SCBA and get the effing side, pretty much. I went to Engine 5's chauffeur, who was Domingo Lopez at the time. I said, Lope, I need your air pack. Where is it? He got it for me. I donned my SCBA, got back to the front, at which time Vinny and Jay Craig got Brad up. He's inside the front door. Chief Donahue pushed me, said, go get him. Whenever I pulled Brad out, couldn't tell who he was due to the nature of his gear, got his helmet off, got his mask off, and that's when I realized it's Brad. I'm like, crap. I was like, are you okay, bro? He's like, no, I'm effed up. So Lieutenant Weems, who's firefighter Weems at the time, came over. He said, you good? Are you ready? I looked at Brad and said, hey, bro, this is going to hurt. I'm sorry. We got to move you. I got on his arms. Kevin got on his legs. Carried him down to the medics, who immediately initiated care. Went back to the front door where I made face-to-face with Vinny Denicio and Jay Craig. They said, Artie's in the basement. We can't get her. I said, is there a ladder in the hole? They said, yeah, there's a ladder as soon as you go in. We saw heavy fire conditions on Division 1s in the basement. Found a firefighter next to me with a charged hose line inside the door, who I found out was Lieutenant Tyson at the time. I said, open this line up and keep this fire off us. You go between the first floor and the basement, just make sure you keep this fire off us. I immediately started to crawl in. As soon as I reached the hole, I started reaching around to find the ladder, which I'm guessing must have kicked out when they came up. There's no ladder, and the floor starts giving away. So I've reached back, grabbed somebody, pulled myself up, and just started telling them, hey, get me a ladder, get me a ladder, get me a ladder. I need a ladder to get in the basement. Artie's screaming. I'm sitting there talking to her, trying to keep her calm best I can. I don't know how long it was. Finally got another ladder to me, put it down the hole, and as soon as I put the ladder down, got down, and Artie was right there. She's on her side. Her mask was already knocked off her face, completely depleted of all air. She probably had about 5 to 10 feet of stuff on top of her. The debris from the first floor collapsed into the basement. Having my portable from being assistant chief, I started keying up the radio, which I was getting busy signals. As soon as I got a chirp, I said, 23 seat of fireboard. I need a RIP pack additional manpower for the Mayday. And revised Wilmington Fire Command, so they knew where I was and what I needed for the incident. No response. I transmitted 3 to 4 times that I could get out with no response whatsoever. Sat there and continued to talk to Artie as I'm removing debris from her. At this time, I'm by myself this whole time. As I'm removing stuff from her, I'm trying to pull her. She's still stuck. Continuing to remove stuff from her. I'm guessing maybe 10, 15 minutes later, my bell starts ringing. I know I'm getting low on air. And I'm just telling myself I'm not leaving her until she's free. And that's my complete mindset the whole time. As I'm still removing stuff from her, I'm trying to pull her. She's still stuck. I'm like, Artie, what are you, like, what's stuck? She's like, my air pack's stuck. I'm like, okay. So I started working around that. At that time, Dave Roberts comes down the ladder. And I said, Dave, do you have a knife on you? He said, yeah. At that point, I chose to cut her air pack straps off her, removing that from the equation of her being pinned down. Try and pull her some more, and she's still not budging. So I'm looking around, trying to figure out what's still pinning her down. At that time, I saw a large object, which we found out was one of the commercial freezers that was in the first floor on the front room. Tried picking it up, I couldn't. Don't know how, but I managed to slide myself in, push up with my back, reach over my left hand and drag her out. Once we got her free from everything, sat her on the attic ladder, and then that's when my mask sucked in my face. I was completely depleted of all air out of my air cylinder. I looked at Dave, said, hey, I got to go, I'm out of air. Stay with her and get her out. I looked at Artie. I said, Artie, you're going to be fine. They're going to get you out, but I got to go. Like, I'm out of air. At that time, there's conflicting reports of this part. I could have sworn I saw a firefighter coming down the ladder. Looked at him and said, hey, I'm out of air. Artie's right here. Get her out. She's free. Went up around that person, got outside and took my face piece off and let fireboard know that I've exited the structure. And then I went to rehab. Probably about a half hour later, I could hear command advising that they're getting ready to remove the firefighter from the basement. I went up with another crew from the front and with the Stokes to remove her. I'm like, what's taking so long to get Artie out? Like, yeah, we're removing the firefighter through the Charlie's. I'm like, why takes Artie so long to get out? She's right there. And I was told it was Leach and not Artie, which we had no idea about. Chris and Jerry, who were on pretty much the Charlie side, and Artie being in the front, just 2 separate fires. And then I didn't find out about Jerry until probably about 45 minutes to an hour later. And that's when everything just starts hitting you all at once. And from there, it's probably about a half hour later or so, I was released from the scene, told Station 1, and I wait for the orders to come here to talk to investigators and everything. So that's pretty much my actions for that whole incident.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a short break. We'll reconvene in about 10 minutes. Okay, folks, if you could start trying to find your seats again, please. We're going to get started in just a minute. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So at this time, we're going to have retired firefighter Brad Speakman come up and go through a few of his accounts from the incident on September 24th, 2016 and beyond. So at this time, Brad, it's all yours.
Nice leg. Welcome. Sorry if I'm squinting, the light's kind of in my face here. As you see, September, I was the nozzle man, engine 1. September 2016 was a little crazy because we were kind of short-staffed in the department, so I spent half of my time over Squad 4. So when Dave Roberts was doing his thing, he said, that I didn't get any fires on engine 1. As I was kind of back and forth that year, so it wasn't my first fire, but I did, just some housekeeping things cleared us up a little bit. So obviously you've heard that it was real early in the morning. Oh, and another housekeeping thing, I shake a lot, so if you see me shaking, it's just 3 o'clock in the morning. As has been said, we kind of knew it was going to be a fire. So on the way there, I did some things that I don't usually do. I was buttoning up my gear, just knew that it was going to be a good fire, ear flaps down, things that, when we go to these typical house fires, you're kind of in and out in a few minutes. I don't know why that day was different, or what that morning, what I thought was going to happen. So, I just, for some reason, approached it a little bit differently. Like it had been said, we came in from the bottom side. Kevin tried to park so that we could get out, but being a tight street, you had to hop on top of a car, so I was pulling hand line off on top of somebody's hood in a really tight street with a lot of people. They said there was a lot of people there. I don't remember, how many people were there. I remember a half-naked gentleman out the front of the exposure Delta yelling about how there was kids inside. So, we get the hand line stretched to the front door, just, getting ready to go in. I make it probably 10 feet inside, don't have water. Lieutenant Cawthray tells me to come back out because we were having some water issues. At this point, the first floor was pretty well involved. That's kind of why he was telling me to get out, so I wasn't, unnecessarily exposing myself to anything. Get out, get back in, and, we make a good push. Like, we thought we had everything knocked down pretty quickly. A few minutes. People have said that the timeline, they don't understand, the timeline, the difference in how things played out, but it could have just been a few minutes. We've obviously seen that the collapse happened fairly quickly after, we made it inside. Like Caesar had said, I was trying to make a push to the rear to try and get to the basement. The layout was, pretty straightforward, but as you saw, and I don't know if we had that picture, you would have to go into the dining room and then go around to the kitchen and then make the stairs that way. So we were going to try and do that. We were, on the move to try and do that, and I felt the floor start to get real spongy. So I turned to Caesar and said, we got to get out. The floor's going to go. Like he said, he's a little skeptical at first. But it was very noticeable that the floor was, going to be going. If anybody's ever been in close to that type of situation, I know we've been to fires where little holes have, happened. You know that feeling of when the floor's, getting real spongy. So made a turn, try and get out. Caesar was yelling for everybody to get out. Made it to, I can say from here to the screen over there. I was literally several feet from the front door. I remember seeing the concrete. I was that close. That's when the floor was starting to go, like the rest of the floor was going. I had a hold of Caesar's pack, was trying to grab to windowsill. There was a couch there that was dragging me backwards too. I knew that at that moment that I was going to be going in the basement. So I didn't want to bring Caesar into the basement with me. So I let go, thinking that, this was going to be it. And I really didn't want to bring him down with me. Secondary to that, I figured I could probably land, on my feet if I let go, and I could just, ride everything down with it. That's not the way it turned out. But in your head, it worked out better that way. Down in the basement, like's been said multiple times, immediately flashed over, well involved with fire. When you're down there, and you're in all that fire, you realize that at that moment that things are, going to be going pretty bad. I was probably 2 feet away from Marty. We were really close enough to touch each other. I was trapped under debris, but nowhere near as significantly trapped as her. I don't know how a matter of a couple feet could have mattered so much in how much debris was actually on top of all of us. I knew that this scenario was, the worst case scenario. And throughout training, and, at that point, I had over 20 years in the fire service, taking a lot of classes. I've always, said this from the beginning. The classes I took, every training opportunity that I took led me to have the ability to recognize the situation and recognize what needed to be done. I knew that at that point, I didn't want my face mask to fail. I knew that I needed to, protect my face mask. So one of the key things that happened, and one of the reasons I think that, at least my facial area wasn't, damaged, was because I tucked myself into a ball and I started working on my breathing. I wanted to conserve air until they could get down to me. And I certainly, like I said, didn't want my face mask to fail. So when I tucked myself in a ball, I actually presented my helmet at that point and the back of me was what was taking the brunt of, all the fire. I'd already lost function of my hands. My arms and hands were severely damaged at that point. And, I say that my training kicked in and that I wanted to protect my face mask, but I've freely admitted it before, that there was a point where I wanted to take my face mask off just because of the pain. And I thought that it was going to be over anyway, but luckily, stronger head prevailed and decided to, try and make a go of it. It could have only been a few minutes. I know they say that it was 9 minutes from, the collapse that I was removed. It definitely felt like about 2 hours. It's just, if you have a chance to stop by and see the house, or you haven't seen the house, like I could have thought I was in a warehouse that night. It was so big, but it literally is the smallest area. It's like a closet. But you would have thought that there was so much going on. Like, we were probably 5 feet from Chris, and I wouldn't have been able to tell you that. There was just so much that happened in the house, so much debris. As they showed in the NIOSH report, that there was a lot of stuff on that first floor, and that made it, very difficult, to get around. And you've heard through the other accounts that, it was just a difficult operation. So I decided to, tuck myself in a ball, decided to, work on my breathing. And then I felt a relief. I felt like conditions had changed, and, to find out later that it was just the forward thinking and the quick thinking of Lieutenant Tyson, Davey, Vinny, whoever else, were the people that initially knew that they had to knock this fire down because, as you saw and as they've said, like the fire flow path was going right through where me and Artie were and right out the front door. the basement was involved with fire, and we were part of that. So I can tell you that relief that I felt was, you know, an amazing feeling, and it gives you the opportunity to reassess, you know, what's going on at that moment. I don't know how many minutes it took for me to kick free of whatever it was, and to this day I wouldn't be able to tell you what I was trapped under anyway. I'd imagine it was part of a couch or part of whatever. We landed next to a pool table that was down there in the basement. So, you know, I was able to, at that point, you know, kick myself free and move over to where the basement, or where the steps were, or not the steps, the ladder that had been put in place. Kevin Weems, amazing firefighter he is, decided to get a ladder right away, which was phenomenal because that ended up helping me get out. At that night, I thought I was stepping on something. I was probably stepping on that ladder. It gave, you know, Jake the leverage that was necessary to get me pulled up. I do remember him yelling at me, telling me I got to help myself, but I didn't. Like I said, I didn't have function of my hands. You know, they were pretty bad off. So just able to, you know, get pulled out. You know, he pulled me out, threw me on the. They put me in the front lawn. You know, we have joked about that I was just abandoned there. I do believe I was. When Chief Donahue came to take command, he stepped over top of me, like I was just gone at that point. So, and EMS, the medics were amazing. I thought that Nick and them threw me out on the street just to lay there too for a while, but it was, you know, just a time frame thing. And, you know, I can joke about it now after all the recovery and surgeries, but, you know, all in all, that I was well taken care of right away. So, you know, my time frame was pretty small. You know, we went to a house that we thought we were going to be able to take care of, you know, pretty quickly. And obviously, like most things in firefighting, it's, you know, not set in stone. You know, we know what to do, you know what we have to do when we get there. And then you're always presented with something, except this was, you know, we were presented with the worst case scenario. And we had a lot of great firemen on scene that night that did a lot of things that went well above and beyond what, you know, what needed to be done with a very short amount of people. As you can tell, you know, with the 8 guys or so that, you know, did the videos, you know, we had the companies that were initially on scene, and when you think back about it, you know, we were down 5 or 6 guys, some due to injuries outside. You know, imagine the first in companies and you're losing 6, 7 guys right after the beginning, and you're still having to get 3 people out. You know, it's a pretty crazy thing to think about. So, you know, that's about it. You know, it's like I was saying, timelines. You know, my story is pretty short. A lot happened in a short period of time. You know, I'm very thankful to be here, and I'm thankful that the fire department is putting this on and doing what's necessary. This has, you know, been long overdue, and it's been a great program. Thank you.
Let's say a few words about your gear.
Oh, yeah, we completely forgot about that. I apologize. We have pictures of the gear. I was supposed to bring it up today. I completely forgot to bring it. So as you can see, this is a picture of my bunker coat. Right arm, I'm believing that would be. See how heavily damaged it was. This gear is not black. It is our tan set of gear. You know, we had 2 sets of gear that we switch out in Wilmington. At this point, it was a tan set and a black set. I admittedly really didn't like the black set, so when the memo comes out that we have to switch out for getting it cleaned, I was very happily to switch out quickly into that. But you can see from the damage from the right side, that's what I took. The other side, I think, I don't know if we have a picture. Yeah. And that'll show you why, how I knew that, you know, I lost, you know, the function of my hands pretty quickly, because, you know, I don't know why both arms took that much damage right away, but, you know, it was pretty instantaneous, and just seconds after the collapse and being trapped, that I knew that my arms, you know, were pretty bad off. And as you can see through what kind of damage my, you know, the gear took at that point. we have there's my helmet. Like I said, when I tucked into a ball, I was faced where I knew the fire was coming at me. So I knew the helmet was going to take, a lot of the brunt of, the direct fire impingement. And I was happy with that because that meant that my face mask wasn't, doing it. So as you can see, that was a bend 2. And, bend 2s after fires, you can usually wipe the stuff off, but, it obviously took a beating that night. Face piece, as you can see, it's still intact, which was good. It was glazed over, like you'd never be able to see out of that again. That is from the heat damage, not just soot on it. Our speaker on the so, amazingly, it didn't fail, which, for me was a good thing. As you can see, we have our clip on the bottom. The clip was kind of melted off, but, the face piece was still acting, and I still had air in my cylinder, I believe, when I was pulled out. So that's it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks again, Brad. I know that it wasn't easy to stand here in front of everyone and say those words, but we definitely appreciate you doing that for us. Thank you. Okay, so the balance of our program is going to focus on the investigation report and where we were at the time and where we have transitioned to and where we plan to go to in the future. So no fire department ever wants to have to deal with any type of incident where there's injuries or deaths to their personnel, but unfortunately, it does happen. We didn't think it would happen to us to this magnitude, but it did. And again, that's why we're here today. So in November of 2018, the NIOSH report was released. The NIOSH investigation was several months after the fire. There was multiple people here from different agencies, again, evaluating the scene itself, evaluating the personnel accounts, evaluating PPE, evaluating SOPs, tactics, radio communications, and so forth. We'll go through most of this report. Some things we're not going to spend a lot of time on, just in the essence of our own time today, but other things we will spend a few minutes and talk about in detail. So what we know from the investigation report, of course, this fire started in the basement. The origin of the fire was a little bit towards the A side in the basement. As you heard from Brad speaking, there was a pool table in the basement. That was kind of the general area we believe that the fire did start. If you notice to the right of the screen, those are the stairs going down to the basement. The stairs, the stringers for the stairs did not collapse. They'll actually have a picture of that in a few minutes. If you look straight behind the stairs there, you'll see that's the entry door, the door to the exterior, other than the sliding glass door, and those were the only other exterior access points other than the front window that you heard was covered over and eventually did have flooring that covered it when the first collapse occurred. So this was the layout of the first floor. As you can see, there was a considerable amount of weight load on the first floor. There were 3 full-size refrigerators, including and also a full-size chest-style freezer, large TVs, large furniture, an aquarium. There was, again, an extremely heavy weight load on the first floor. The stairs to the second floor, as you heard already, were off to the right of the front door. And then the basement stairs are directly underneath of the stairs to the second floor. So again, these were the conditions on arrival. The first floor did flash over once the storm door was open. That was prior to any water on the fire from the front. And again, you saw from the video when water was eventually put on the fire in the rear. It might be a little hard to see, but down in the lower right area for you of the screen, these are the estimated positions of the firefighters upon entry. You'll see both ladder 2 officer and excuse me, the follow-in, which was Joe Ryan. We're off to the right. Engine 5 officer, John Cawthray, was at the doorway with the nozzle. Brad Speakman, Engine 1 Bravo with the nozzle person, was probably the furthest person in on the first floor. And Engine 5 Bravo, Artie Hope, was off to the left when she made entry the second time. So that was the estimated positions upon the time of the collapse. The initial collapse area, again, was more towards the A side of the structure. And as you've heard from the accounts, this is when Brad Speakman, Chris Leach, and Artie Hope fell into the basement. Eric Haley began to fall, but was able to, and with the momentum of everyone else going forward, was able to make it out the door. The remaining portion of the first floor was still intact at this point, which would be closer to the C side of the structure. At the top of the screen, you'll see two more figurines of firefighters, Squad 4 Charlie and Delta. That's Jerry Fickus and Terry Tate. Again, they made entry through the C side at the basement level and started into the basement. At this point, if you also notice down in the lower area of the screen, you'll see Squad 4 Alpha and Bravo. Those are Jacob Craig and Vinny Denizio there at the front. Again, they had the attic ladder that was brought up, and they worked in that area towards the front of the structure. Again, just another diagram showing the position of apparatus, also the conditions. So most of the fire gets knocked down in the front. Again, delayed operation, getting water on the side C. Eventually, like you saw in the video, water was applied from side C. That was about the same time as the secondary collapse, which brought the rest of the first floor, or at least what was left, towards the C side down into the basement. So at this point now, all of the first floor, with the exception of the exterior portions of the flooring and the very center portion where there was a support beam, were now in the basement, either on top of the firefighters that were in the basement or piled up more in a lean-to collapse. Again, from the, say, the exterior walls or the exposure walls down into the basement. This is some of the investigation photos. You can see here from the, this is from the sidewalk looking to the A side of the structure. You can see, again, 4 steps up to the actual entrance of the doorway. You can see the fences, how narrow everything was, making the approach. So the difficulty in the handline stretch, difficulty, again, with with the personnel that were operating there. There just was not a lot of space. Again, the structure was only 18 foot wide with fences front and back. Another shot of side A. You can see a little bit of the basement window here. It's kind of dead center underneath of the A side window of the structure. Again, wasn't a very large opening, and it was covered with the floor and the floor joists that had fallen, again, in more of a lean-to collapse from the A side wall. There's another shot looking in the front door. If you notice right in the center of the screen, that is the one of the collapsible ladders that was put in from the A side. So you can just kind of estimate on the depth there. That's a 10-foot collapsible ladder. You can see basically one rung exposed. So we'll say approximately 18 inches of that ladder were above the floor line. These are also the initial hand lines that were stretched into the structure, as well as an additional hand line that was put in service after the collapse. This is looking in from the front door, looking at the first floor. Again, this wall that you're looking at was really the only major part of the first floor that was still standing after both collapses. There is a beam, a load-bearing beam that is running underneath of this wall. It is still mostly there. It is heavily charged and did start to fail, but it is still pretty much there at this point. Again, the rest of the first floor is in the basement. This is looking up the stairs from the front door. You can see the line that was eventually stretched to the second floor. And again, you can see that the stairs to the second floor are intact, but are heavily damaged. You can see by the charring, they are heavily damaged as well. This is looking down from the front door into the collapse area. And you can see the amount of debris that is still in this area. This is before most of the debris from the A side was removed from the structure. This column here is what was left of the original block wall that would separate the garage area of the original garage area, the basement, from the what was converted to living space. So this wall and this beam did help support the first floor of the structure. As you can see, most of that was not there. And as you heard from several of the accounts, that there was actually a tripping hazard there in that area of the structure, as the lower portion of that wall was still there. There was, we'll say, about 1 foot to 2 foot tall of that wall that was still there. As you can see from some of the debris, the refrigerators, there were some pretty heavy objects, again, like we talked about with the weight load on the first floor. This area to the lower corner of the screen, this is the area of the first floor that still was remaining, that led to the steps. That was probably, from the doorway in, that was probably the only, we'll say, area of the first floor that you could stand on that was left. Everything else was completely gone, like you see here, where it was either leaning to or completely had fallen into the basement. This is a little difficult to see on this picture, we realize that, but this is physically at the threshold of the door looking in. This is the area of the floor that's still there. So we believe this is the area that several of the initial company members that didn't fall into the basement, this was the area that they were standing on. So that was intact, and we did walk across this to pull these hand lines out, so even well after the fire, that section of flooring did remain. Again, another picture looking down into the collapse area. Again, the ladder that was placed in there, looking down into the basement area. This was Artie Hope's SCBA that was still in the building. Again, it was removed later on, and also you'll see the hand lines that were still there as well. This is the C side of the structure immediately following the fire. As you can see, this is actually debris. We'll look at a closer shot of that here in a little bit. That was part of the difficulty making access in from the C side. Again, this was the basement entry door. The wooden fence, or what was left of it, that was pulled down in the rear, and there's a little section of wooden fence that's still standing here to the left of the screen. This is looking into where again, this would have been originally the garage door opening that was converted to a sliding door when it was converted to living space. And you can see here's another one of the refrigerators or freezer that had fallen into the basement. This is all the first floor that's leaning down from the seaside wall into the basement area. Again, this is all the complications that you heard of from those earlier accounts of the difficulties they had making access from the seaside. So this was the amount of debris and flooring that had to be navigated through to eventually find and remove those firefighters that came out through the seaside. These are two pictures from in the basement. This is physically standing in the basement looking up at the front door. This is the front doorway here. And this is actually looking at the basement stairs. So these are the stairs to the second floor, and there's the stringers and a couple treads all the way down at the lower area of what was left of the basement stairs as well after the fire, of course. So you can kind of gauge the depth of how far the firefighters fell and then would have had to have been pulled back through, like Brad Speakman was. So there was, as part of the NIOSH report and all NIOSH reports, there's always critical factors or contributing factors that are put out as part of the report. I'm just going to spend a couple minutes here and read a couple of these. Lack of scene size up and risk assessment, lack of incident management and command safety, lack of an incident action plan, inappropriate fireground tactics for below-grade fire, lack of company crew integrity, lack of personnel accountability system, lack of rapid intervention crews, ineffective fireground communications, and lack of professional development for fire officers and firefighters. And we'll address each one of these areas as we go. As a department, we created these three contributing factors. These are three things that we're not going to change regardless of any tactics or any of the other items that we're going to talk about. This was a known arson fire. There was an accelerant use, which put it into an advanced fire condition very early in the incident. You could see from the video from the seaside earlier that there was a considerable amount of fire upon arrival, and it was, again, being that it had plenty of ventilation, and there was an accelerant used as the sliding glass door was partially open when the fire was was set, and again, did certainly contribute to the amount of fire conditions upon arrival. So they, again, very advanced fire. The basement of the structure was modified from the original use. You saw the wall that was partially removed. Again, that being part of that wall being removed did allow, we believe, for the early collapse of the first floor. And an extremely heavy weight load on the first floor of the structure. And you could see, again, three refrigerators, a freezer, all the other large pieces of furniture and other items there. There was a lot of weight on that first floor without a lot of support. So these three factors compiled together, the amount of fire, part of the load-bearing wall being removed in the basement, and the amount of weight on the first floor were most likely going to cause the first floor to collapse, whether there was firefighters on it or not. So there were definitely factors in at this particular fire that were out of our control. So starting at the recommendations from the NIOSH report. As part of the strategy and incident action plan, the incident commander should ensure a detailed scene size-up and risk assessment occurs during the initial fireground operations, including the deployment of resources to Side Charlie. Scene size-up and risk assessment should occur throughout the incident. So again, I know the writing's kind of small here. We're not going to spend a lot of time with this here. In January of 2019, we updated our scene size-up report as part of our standard operating procedures to include that a 360-degree size-up is a critical component in developing an incident action plan and will be completed at all incidents. So whether that's done by the incident commander, whether that's done by an initial arriving company officer, whether that's done by a crew member on one of the arriving companies, that it is part of our standard operating procedure now that we make it an early priority when we're establishing our incident action plan to have someone assess that entire structure from all sides. So again, timing, access, those are all factors that we know that don't make this easy sometimes, but we are making this a priority in our size up and eventually into our incident action plan. With our Seaside report, Seaside report should be clear, concise, and informative while sticking to the below points. Seaside report will be utilized to assist the incident commander with pertinent information of conditions on the rear of the structure. The Seaside report should be completed as early as possible in an incident, and it can be completed by the initial incident commander, second arriving battalion chief, or assigned to a team member by the IC. Again, we're not dictating exactly who has to get it done, but we're saying we want it done, and we want it done as early as possible at the incident. All of our apparatus are now equipped with cards for the officer and also the crew members on what items we're looking for on the A side report and what items we're looking for on the C side report. Of course, part of our C side and of course our A side assessment is, we're trying to definitely identify when we do have basement fires, and we'll talk more about those here in a few minutes. But long story short, this is in every piece of apparatus. It's basically taped to the different positions in the cab of the apparatus. The Seaside reports are taped into the tiller boxes on the ladder apparatus for the outside vent firefighter in the tiller box. And again, this is just to cue in some items that we're looking for that we want on these reports, because again, we don't always know who's going to be giving these reports. Recommendation number 2, fire departments should develop and implement a standard operating procedure or guideline for tactical operations involving below-grade fires. In November of 2018, we released our basement fire SOP. Up to this point, we did not have a specific basement fire SOP on how we would handle basement fires. As you heard from the accounts from September of 2016, all of our initial resources went to Side A. That was a customary practice at the time. That was also customary for many fire departments in this region to handle basement fires that way. Unfortunately, our fire department, like many others, learned this the hard way, that basement fires need to be approached a little bit differently. All of the individuals that you heard from, they were doing their job. They were well-trained firefighters with lots of experience, and they were well-trained on fighting basement fires from the front door, locating the basement stairs, advancing down the basement stairs as conditions would allow, and then fighting the fire that way. Up to that point, we had not really done any tactical training on fighting basement fires a different way unless we could not find the interior stairs to the basement. Moving forward from our SOP and then how we train our folks, we changed our SOP to reflect that because of our ability or our attempts to get to the seaside and also to assess different buildings a little bit differently to rule out basement fires, that if we have a known basement fire, and again, I know it's a little difficult to read here on the screen, we knew that going into it, that we're going to attack those basement fires from the easiest available exterior opening. So between the first arriving engine company, the second arriving engine company, we would make a coordinated attack to use an exterior opening to extinguish a basement fire. So again, this was a big change for us. This is still a transitioning change, again, based on good size up, and that's something we're trying to train all of our folks to the best that we can. And again, early identification of a basement fire, trying not to put our firefighters over top of that burning basement, and then being able to at least control the fire somehow from the exterior before we do put anyone across that floor. So again, this is a work in progress for us, but we do feel that we're making strides in the right direction to handle basement fires differently. So again, all visible fire in the basement will be knocked down from the exterior before crews enter the structure. So again, with good size up and our personnel sticking to their SOPs and following direction of their officers, hopefully we don't put any more firefighters over top of burning basements unnecessarily. Fire departments should ensure that the incident commander develops and communicates the strategy and incident action plan or tactics during the initial stages of the incident. The incident action plan should be updated when benchmarks are met or not met. All right, very simply, in 2019, we updated our incident action plan SOP. Key parts of the incident action plan will be communicated in all incidents, including 360, initial size up, Charlie side report, exposure assessment, strategy, mode of operation will be announced during an incident. Again, we've made good strides training our initial incident commanders, all of our chief level officers and those acting as such, that we want these benchmarks communicated. Okay, that lets everyone on that scene know that we've completed our 360s, we've evaluated the entire structure, what strategy we're operating in, offensive, defensive, and what our initial incident priorities are going to be. And again, if we feel we're making good strides with this, we're continuing to train our officers and continuing to train all of our firefighters, again, on making these size-up assessments and then ultimately the information that we want communicated. Recommendation 4, fire departments need to ensure that critical incident benchmarks are communicated to the incident commander throughout the incident. In 2017, we instituted our CAN report SOP, conditions, actions, and needs, to streamline the information that's being provided from the potentially interior crews to the incident commander and then vice versa. So again, another work in progress. We're again training all of our folks from officer level, firefighter level to again streamline the reports and then get the critical information that we're looking for, those benchmarks that the incident commander is looking for to see where we stand progress-wise, again, from fire attacks, searches being completed, problems, potential problems, and so on and so forth. Recommendation 5, fire department should integrate fire behavior research findings developed by NIST and UL into operational practices by developing standard operating procedures, conducting live fire training, and revising fireground tactics. We've got something happening. Okay, let's go ahead and play the fire video, please. Okay, so we've made it a priority to both at our recruit academies and then our current personnel to reestablish as much or establish as much live fire training as possible. Since 2016, we've made good strides of getting our personnel as much live fire training as possible. The 41st Recruit Academy that you saw the video from there, they were probably the most live fire training we've ever done for any academy, at least in recent knowledge anyway. The part of the video that you saw there, there was firefighters making an attack through Bilco doors. And again, that's part of our training with our basement fire SOP, and then making an assessment and then attacking that basement fire from an exterior opening. So all of our new folks being trained in, at least for the last 3 recruit academies, have all been trained on making those exterior opening attacks on basement fires as the initial fire attack. Again, in coordination with good scene size up and, obviously the incident commander prompting that to be done. Fire departments should ensure adequate staffing and deployment of resources based upon the community's risk assessment. So effective September of 2021, this year, actually last week to be specific, we've upgraded all our box alarm fire responses. Structure fires on a first alarm assignment now receive 4 engine companies, 2 ladders, and 2 battalion chiefs. We have built-in second and third alarm assignments, and high-rise structure fires now receive 5 engines, 2 ladder companies, 2 battalion chiefs, and then again, built-in second and third alarm assignments. Again, we want to front-load our assignments with as many personnel as possible. As you heard from the accounts from Lakeview Road, unfortunately, there just wasn't enough hands there initially. So we've made this a priority to try to put as many resources to fires as soon as possible, at least to reported fires, and so we're not piecing an incident together as much as possible. So we're trying to get, again, as many resources on scene as possible, as quickly as possible. Fire department should ensure that once command is established in an incident, the incident commander maintains control of situation status, resource status, fireground communications, and ensures the completion of tactical objectives. We've worked hard to essentially upgrade our incident command tools. This allows the incident commander to have the tracking resources necessary to be able to more effectively manage the incident. Approximately 3 years ago, we started purchasing some incident command boxes. Those were put in service in the battalion chief cars, and long story short, they're a tool for the incident commander to track resources. These have been working out very effectively, and we're going to continue to grow with our incident command tools. Fire department should ensure the incident commander establishes a stationary command post for effective incident management, which includes the use of a tactical worksheet, effective fireground communications, and a personnel accountability system. So we're training all of our incident commanders to take a little bit of a step back, run that incident from a better management point, using the street boxes, our incident command street boxes, and coupling those with our tactical worksheets, and also our accountability system. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Fire department should incorporate the principles of command safety into the incident management system during the initial assumption of command. This ensures that the strategic level safety responsibilities are being incorporated into the command functions throughout the incident. So again, we're training our incident commanders and our folks as they move up into incident command roles, how to manage incidents a little bit more effectively. Again, having those incident command tools available for them, being able to follow those incident priorities, and ultimately manage a safer incident. Fire departments should review their personal accountability system, standard operating procedures. The resource status function should account for all resources throughout an incident. So after Lakeview Road, we upgraded our accountability system. We went to a passport system that's individually named. The company passports are divided up into our Team 1 and Team 2, which is how we typically operate, as you heard through some of the accounts. Even in 2016, we were operating this way. Again, this puts a name to every riding position. Every company officer sends in their riding positions to the battalion chiefs daily, and we have these running lists, and both district battalion cars and the rest of the staff officers have these as well. So we have true accountability of who's where and what positions all the time. Again, as you heard from the accounts from Lakeview Road, you could tell there was a breakdown on accountability. It wasn't clear who was lost, who was where, who was with who, and it was very difficult for the incident commander and also and the rest of the folks involved with attempts to make rescues, because they just didn't know necessarily who was where. So again, this is another tool that we're training our folks to use to effectively manage the incident with stronger accountability, knowing exactly who's where, on what apparatus and what riding positions by name all the time. And again, another work in progress for us, but it is great strides from where we were in 2016. Fire department should develop and implement a standard operating procedure, guidelines of deployment and use of rapid intervention crews. We've updated our RID SOP. We now have the automatic 4th engine company on all structure fire responses, or 5th engine company on high-rise structure fire responses. This is to get those additional hands on scene to assist with those rapid intervention assignments as early as possible. As you heard from Lakeview Road, Chris Leach requested the 4th engine upon his arrival there. They were dispatched and had to respond from quite a bit of a distance away, so there was a delay getting those extra personnel on scene. As you heard from those that were involved in attempts to make rescues, there just wasn't a lot of extra hands. And we know that our best ability to save our own people is to have those resources on scene as early as possible. So that's why we've added the additional resources, the alarm assignments initially, and again, we've updated our SOPs to reflect as such, as far as exactly what those rapid intervention crews' responsibilities would be on scene as early as possible in the incident. And again, that's nothing new for many of you in the room. That's we've been doing the RIT thing for quite some time, but we're just trying to get the extra hands there, and again, more clarification on some of those duties. Fire department should ensure that all firefighters and fire officers are trained in managing a mayday, and fire department should provide a checklist for the incident commander regarding procedures in the event of a mayday. We created our own mayday tactical worksheet. It is on the back of every one of our regular tactical worksheets. It's also in our incident command street boxes, and it's a quick tool for the incident commander to be able to grab and start tracking resources to manage a potential mayday. With this, we've also developed a Mayday training program. Every firefighter, from our newest person to our most senior person, goes through Mayday training annually, and all of our incident commanders and/or acting incident commanders are trained in managing Maydays. So, they do this over the radio every year. Everybody calls Maydays. The incident commanders acknowledge them and then track the information based upon what's happening there. Hopefully we never have to use these again, but in the event that we do, we feel that the training coupled with the Mayday worksheets and the accessibility of that hopefully will allow it an easier ability to track those resources. So between the accountability system, the command street boxes, and then the Mayday worksheet, that we're trying to give those incident commanders the tools that they need there in front of them in the event that something does happen and we do have to handle a Mayday situation. Fire department should ensure that the radio communication system is capable of providing adequate coverage based upon the demands of the incident and complies with NFPA 1561. Fire department should ensure that the communications standard operating procedure is in place for dispatchers to support fireground operations and the incident commander. So we don't have a lot of control over the functions of our radio system, but we do have control over our users in that system. We've made it a priority as far as our working fire designation. When we know we have a working incident, that we are now securing our primary TAC channel and putting all other resources off of that TAC channel very early in the incident. As you could hear from the earlier radio traffic that we listened to, at the time of the fire, that wasn't the case. Into the Mayday, that had to be announced a couple times to clear that channel. So we're trying to do that in the beginning of all of our working incidents now, trying to clear the channel, and also we're trying to train our company officers, our firefighters, and our incident commanders to police their radio traffic. So streamlining messages with CAN reports, trying to keep just the critical information going, and then everyone understanding through their Mayday training that if a Mayday is declared, that essentially radio restriction goes into effect at that point. So if they're not actively involved in that Mayday and or the RIT side of it, that they're only going to use the radio or that specific channel if they have an urgent message or something pertinent to the Mayday. On the dispatcher side, 3 years ago we did Mayday training statewide. We had multiple dispatchers from the Newcastle County 911 Center that participated with that to try to help them with their duties in the event that a Mayday does come across and how that would be handled on the dispatcher end. We're certainly going to try to do more of that training in the near future, and again, another work in progress here, but a lot of this with the radio system itself, again, being out of our control, is our own discipline on the radio on our own end, and we're working on that again. I don't like to keep using the same term here with work in progress, but we feel we are making some strides of trying to make that understanding of what's necessary to be on the radio and what's not during working incidents. Fire departments should ensure that members engaged in emergency operations receive annual proficiency training and evaluation on fireground operations. So we instituted proficiency training approximately 3 years ago. A variety of different ways. We talked about our live fire training, which we've tried to get as many of our personnel through live fire training, just as a refresher, since some of them didn't really receive any since our initial fire academies. We're trying to make that an annual event that they do get live fire training, as well as a variety of other skills, all the basics. So the monthly training program that we run essentially incorporates many basic skills as well as some of the things that we don't touch every day, but we feel it's a good foundation for keeping our personnel sharp on their skills, and we also incorporate, of course, their Mayday training and rapid intervention training in that as well. As you could hear from most of the accounts from Lakeview, most of the folks involved with the fire scene rescues were not the rapid intervention company, but their skills that they used were from the rapid intervention training. And we found this to be pretty consistent through most fire departments that have experienced a major Mayday incident like we did, that again, it was their default training that the individuals received in their RIT training and or Mayday type training that assisted them through those incidents. So even though they weren't the actual dedicated RIT crews, it was their RIT skills and or their firefighter survival and or Mayday skills that helped them through that. And we heard that in numerous accounts today. Fire departments should provide battalion chiefs and staff with a staff assistant or the incident command technician to manage communications, resource status, and information management. We're doing the best we can with this. Of course, we're a small fire department, limited number of resources. And we're trying to provide our incident commanders with all the tools possible and any available command staff to assist the incident commanders at all working incidents. Again, because of our size, we're unable at this point to have an aide with our battalion chiefs all the time. However, we're doing the best we can to get them the tools and then get them the additional help as quick as possible in an incident in order to help manage that incident. Fire department should develop and implement a professional development plan to ensure for career enhancement plus maintaining knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies for emergency response. In 2019, we launched our professional development program. We started with the basics at the officer level for Fire Instructor 1, Fire Officer 1, and Fire Officer 2. All of our company officers, chief level officers that didn't have that training were trained in these levels. Prior to this point, we had no training requirements for anyone above their fire academy. So we have made this a priority to, again, give our folks the tools to become better at their job, set them up for success, and we're trying to continue this through. Next month, we're going to start Fire Officer 3, followed by Fire Instructor 2. Fire Officer 3 will be attended by all chief officers, all captains that do not have that training, and then others as spaces allow. So again, just to keep giving our folks the tools to get their job done, set them up for success, allow them to better manage incidents and manage personnel. And starting in 2022, we're going to start our incident command simulations. We've already purchased the program. We now have the ability through our technology at Fire Headquarters to bring in battalion chiefs, bring in other command level officers, run them through an incident, work things over the radio, put things up on the screen, let them manage those incidents, and go all the way through, including Mayday situations. So we're bringing this to life. We're very proud that we have these tools now to provide to our personnel, and we're excited about getting this launched to, again, help our people be better at their jobs. And we've got a lot of great people. We have a lot of great incident commanders. We have a lot of great officers at all levels, and we're just trying to make them better. At this time, we'd like to entertain any questions if anyone from the audience has any questions. You are being live streamed, so your questions are going to be heard by the whole world. So if you do have any questions, please raise your hand, and if we need to, we'll get you a microphone. Yes, sir.
Hey, Gordon, first of all, kudos to you and the chief for putting this on. I think everybody's learned a lot. Going back to your basement policy.
Hey, mic coming to you.
Thank you. Going back to your SOP policy, with you having the ability, I think probably everybody in this room, regardless of the districts, have townhomes with similar designs. Are you putting an engine in the rear earlier if it's 3 stories in the rear and you have access?
Yes, so because of our building stock and some of our access issues, actually physically getting an apparatus to the rear. For example, Lakeview Road, we had access to the rear with apparatus. That would be a possibility that we would have an engine go directly to that if that did allow. But what we are doing is we're encouraging our crews to immediately stretch a hand line to the rear if possible, whether that's a second due engine company by the SOP, or we figure out for the first due engine company that's necessary. So again, it's just going to depend on access on our part. But yes, an engine in the rear would be a priority in that type of structure. Any other questions? So on the screen here is a picture of the Lakeview Road site where our now new memorial is, and it was dedicated on Friday. I'm sure most of you are aware. It's also, it's come a long way. You can see by the size of the space, it's not a very big space, and you heard from the accounts earlier of how that space seems so much larger. The memorial is beautiful. If you haven't been there, we highly encourage you to spend a little time there. And, again, remember those that were lost there, and also, all the other lives, all of us that were impacted based upon this incident. Again, we highly encourage you to go check it out in person. And one of the back thoughts of this program, because this is our first annual, is we'd like to make this an annual program every year, and that if we do get to the point where we have any income from this program, to allow those funds to support the upkeep of that memorial site. So that's the future plans for this program, and then moving forward with the memorial. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Looney, and we'll let him give some closing remarks.
All right, I'd like to say thank you to Battalion Chief Gordon Davis and Captain Matthew Marcella from our Safety and Training Division. We talked about this on and off for months, maybe even years. We gave them a plan. We sat down, put our heads together, and they executed. They put together an outstanding program. So, Chief Davis, Captain Marcella, outstanding job. I'd also like to thank senior producer from WITN 22, Michaelin Alston, for her super job in the interviews and all the time she put in to make this a success. Also to Jamie and Andrew from Theater N and Rob. We were looking to put this on in a school cafeteria, and then ideas came up, and we thought about Theater N. We said, let's see if we can make this happen. Well, without the three of you, it wouldn't have happened, but thank you very much for everything you've done for us. It was an outstanding job. And like Chief Davis just said earlier, it is our mission, it is our plan. We want to do this every year. Bottom line is, we always say never forget, never forget. Well, this is how we're not going to forget, okay? This is all about Chris, Artie, Jerry, you know, in honoring them on a yearly basis. So as we go forth, I hope everyone took something from this presentation, and what you take from this presentation, pass it along to your troops, all right? This was live streamed, like Chief Davis said. It's also being recorded. Once we get the information on how to access the recording, I strongly suggest all of you out there, take this back to your fire departments, all right? It's going to be at your access. Play it, you know, have the guys and girls come up on a Saturday or Sunday, whatever you need to do. You know, allot that 3.5 hours, 4 hours time and put this presentation on. We want this information out there. It's important information, and, you know, once again, it's all about honoring those that paid that ultimate sacrifice. So I thank you all for coming today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and the troops on the street right now, be safe.
Okay, thank you, Chief. That concludes our program. Again, thank you very much for your attendance, and you know, please feel free to grab us and ask us questions if you come up with something. Thanks again.